The gala gowns had vanished, and the whole crew was about to lose their jobs. Danielle Carter chased them down. A black woman, 29, an industrial laundry worker at Crown Pacific. She read the service tags and walked the back corridors until she found them. She saved the team. Then the Kang group swept into the building. Marble floors, bodyguards, watches worth more than a year of her wages. And one man stopped her cold. Kang Min-jae. They call him the Quiet Dragon. Broad shoulders, black shirt, a dark dragon inked down the left side of his neck, up from the collar to his ear. She knew that mark. She knew that face. Her son carries an old photo of his parents. 6 years old. His name is Noah. She looked at Min-jae and said the boy was his. The old man beside him produced travel records. Forged messages. Proof, they claimed. Min-jae called her a liar in front of everyone. Security moved in. The crew tried to shield her as they dragged her toward the doors. So she lifted the envelope, DNA results, and she demanded the one thing they could not fake. But what she uncovered next was never meant to be found. Before starting the story, comment down below where you are watching from and what time it is there. If stories of karma, love, and hidden truths move you, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a member and help our channel. Danielle counted the garment bags twice before she let herself believe it. 211 pieces logged out for the Crown Pacific Spring Gala. 204 hanging on the return rack. 7 missing. She pressed the clipboard against her chest and looked down the long aisle of the industrial floor, where steam curled off the pressing tables, and the big tunnel washer roared like a train that never arrived. 7 pieces. Gala pieces. The kind the hotel counted in thousands of dollars. Not in items. Rosa, she called. Stop the line. Rosa's hand hovered over the folding conveyor. The whole line? The whole line. The conveyor sighed to a halt. Down the floor, faces lifted from the tables. 12 women, most of them older than Danielle, most of them tired in the specific way of people who had done the same motion 10,000 times. They watched her the way a room watches the person who just said something that might get everyone sent home. Danielle set the clipboard on the metal table. Her apron, the gray-blue laundry uniform they all wore, was already dark at the hem from a morning of leaning against wet carts. She pushed a loose wave of hair off her face and did the math out loud so nobody could accuse her of hiding it. 7 gala garments went out clean and didn't come back. Manifest says they were tagged, sorted, and returned. The rack says they weren't. Rosa's jaw tightened. If they're gone, Mr. Pell fires the last person who touched them. Nobody's getting fired. Danielle said it flat, the way you say a thing you intend to make true. Not today. She did not fully believe it, but belief was a luxury, and she had a shift to run. The Crown Pacific Laundry sat 2 floors below the hotel's marble lobby, in a concrete basement the guests never imagined existed. Up there, a chandelier. Down here, 40 feet of stainless tunnel, a boiler that hit 110 degrees by 10 in the morning, and a color-coded tag system that Danielle herself had rebuilt 18 months ago when she'd been promoted to floor lead. That system was the reason nothing ever went missing. Except now something had. She grabbed the return manifest and ran her thumb down the barcode column. Every gala piece carried a heat-sealed tag with a route printed on it. The sorting bay, the tunnel, the finishing line, the delivery cage, the service elevator, the ballroom staging closet. 6 checkpoints. If a garment fell off the route, it fell off at a checkpoint. You didn't guess. You walked the route backward until the tags stopped matching. Marisol, Danielle waved the older woman over. You ran finishing on the gala batch. Talk to me. Marisol's hands were already shaking. She had 4 grandchildren and a son with no papers and a face that said she had done nothing wrong and expected to be punished anyway. I pressed everything on the sheet. Everything. I swear on my mother. I believe you. Danielle held her eyes until the shaking slowed. I'm not asking who lost them. I'm asking where the route breaks. Those are different questions. Marisol nodded, breathed. The champagne gowns went out in the second cage. The men's dinner jackets, first cage. I remember because the brooch lady from the 14th floor complained her gown smelled like starch. Second cage, Danielle wrote it down. What time? Before 11. Pell rushed us. Of course he had. Marcus Pell, operations director. a man who managed by standing over people and checking his watch. He'd promised the hotel the gala order by noon, and then blamed the floor when the impossible math came due. Danielle looked at the wall clock. 3:40. The gala was tonight. Whatever went wrong had 5 hours to become a firing, or 5 hours to become nothing. Rosa, keep the folding line down, but keep the tunnel running the regular guest laundry. We can't stop the whole basement. She was already tying her apron tighter. I'm walking the route. Backward? Backward. Danielle picked up the barcode scanner and clipped it to her waist. Something got tagged wrong or racked wrong, and tags don't lie. People misread them. She started at the delivery cage. The cages sat by the freight door, 2 rolling steel cabinets where finished garments waited for the service elevator. Danielle scanned every bag hanging in the second cage. Champagne gowns, all present. She scanned the first cage. Dinner jackets, all present. Every barcode chirped green and matched the manifest. So the 7 had left the cages. They'd made it onto the elevator. She rode up. The service elevator opened onto a corridor most guests would never see. Bare concrete, exposed conduit, a yellow line painted on the floor to keep staff traffic to one side. Danielle had walked this corridor 1,000 times pushing carts, and she'd never once looked at it the way she looked at it now, hunting. The route ended at the ballroom staging closet, 40 feet down, past a bend, past a fire door propped with a wooden wedge. She scanned the closet. Gala garments hung in tidy rows, plastic sleeved, ready for the evening. She checked each tag against her list. 6 of the 7 were not here, but one was. A single dinner jacket, tagged for the gala, hung at the very back of the closet behind a rolling coat rack that didn't belong to the laundry at all. She almost missed it. She only found it because the barcode scanner chirped when she leaned in to move the strange rack aside. 1 found, 6 still gone, and a rack that wasn't hers. Danielle stood very still. Her pulse did something she didn't let show on her face. In 18 months of running this floor, she had learned one hard truth. When a system that never fails suddenly fails, it's usually not the system. It's a person, doing something the system was never built to catch. She photographed the strange rack with her phone. She noted the room number stenciled on its frame. Then she went back to the fire door with the wooden wedge, because a propped fire door meant someone had been moving things through a path the manifest didn't track. The wedge was fresh. The concrete under it wasn't scuffed with age. Someone had propped this door recently and often. She pushed through it. The stairwell beyond smelled of cold and cleaning solution. A gray bin sat on the landing, the kind housekeeping used for soiled linen. Danielle lifted the lid. 6 gala garments, folded wrong, shoved in like laundry that had never been laundry at all, like cover. She lifted the top one, a men's dinner jacket, and turned it in the stairwell light. The heat-sealed tag was gone, cut off clean. Someone had removed the routing tags from 6 garments and hidden them 1 flight below the closet where they were supposed to hang. You didn't lose $7,000 jackets by accident and then cut their tags off. You cut their tags off because you meant to take them, and something scared you before you finished. Danielle's phone buzzed. Rosa. Pell's on the floor. He's asking where you are. He's got the hotel's event manager with him, and he does not look like a man having a good day. Tell him I found the gala pieces. A pause. You found them? 6 in a linen bin in the west stairwell, 1 in the staging closet behind a rack that isn't ours. Tags cut off 6 of them. She was already photographing everything. The bin, the folds, the cut edges where the tags used to be. Rosa, listen to me carefully. Don't tell Pell how I found them. Just tell him they're found and I'm bringing them down. And find out whose room number 1412 is. Why 1412? Because that's what's stenciled on the rack that isn't ours. Danielle gathered the 6 garments over her arm, took the 7th from the closet, and carried all 7 down the service elevator herself. She would not let them out of her hands. In a basement where 1 missing item could end a career, 7 recovered items in the wrong hands could be turned into a story about theft, and she already knew whose name the story would land on if she wasn't careful. It would land on Marisol, or Rosa, or the newest Heir, a 19-year-old named Kayla who'd started 3 weeks ago and cried in the break room when she thought no one was watching. It would land on whoever had the least power to argue. The elevator doors opened onto the floor, And there was Pell, tablet in hand, standing beside a slim woman in a hotel blazer, who Danielle recognized as Ms. Ferraro, the gala's event manager. Pell's face was pink and getting pinker. There she is. Pell's voice carried over the machinery. Carter, do you understand what's at stake tonight? Do you? The Kang Group has half the 14th floor. If their event is short one garment. It isn't. Danielle laid the 7 pieces across the inspection table, one at a time, unhurried, letting the count speak for itself. 7 out. The 7 back, all present. Pell blinked. Ms. Ferraro stepped forward and checked the pieces against her own list, and Danielle watched the woman's shoulders come down an inch with each garment she confirmed. They're all here, Ferraro said. Where were they? Danielle looked at Pell before she answered, and she chose her words the way you choose your footing on wet stairs. There was a routing break between the staging closet and delivery. 6 pieces got separated from their tags. I recovered them and re-tagged them. They're clean, pressed, and ready. A routing break. Pell's eyes narrowed. He was not a stupid man, only a cruel one, and cruelty had its own kind of intelligence. You mean somebody screwed up? Who? I mean the system caught it and I fixed it. She met his stare. That's what the system is for. That's not an answer, Carter. It's the one you're getting. The floor had gone quiet. 12 women, pretending to work, listening to every word. Danielle felt the weight of them behind her like a second spine. Ferraro cut in, brisk, relieved, uninterested in blood. Mr. Pell, the garments are recovered and my client is happy. I'd call that a good outcome and leave it there. She gathered her list. The Kang delegation checks in at 5. I need these upstairs by 4:30. They'll be up by 4:15, Danielle said. Ferraro gave her a small nod, the kind of nod one competent woman gives another across a room full of men, and left. Pell waited until the doors closed behind her. Then he stepped close enough that Danielle could smell the coffee on him. I don't know what you're covering, he said, low. But I know you're covering something, and when I find out what, it's going in a file with your name on it. He straightened. Get them upstairs. He walked off. The line exhaled. Rosa appeared at Danielle's elbow, phone in hand, voice pitched under the machines. Room 1412 is registered to a private security contractor, booked by the Kang Group, booked this morning. Danielle absorbed that. A garment theft cover-up, staged the same morning the Kang Group's people took over half the 14th floor. She didn't have the shape of it yet. But she'd learned to feel a thing before she could name it, and this thing felt deliberate. Keep that between us, she said. For now. Danielle, Rosa's hand found her wrist. You saved all our jobs today. You know that. I logged 7 garments. That's all anybody needs to know. She untied her apron and shook it out. Now help me get them upstairs before Pell finds a new reason to breathe on us. By 4:10, the 7 gala pieces hung in the 14th floor staging closet, re-tagged, inspected, perfect. Danielle signed the delivery log with her own name so that if anything else went wrong tonight, the accountability stopped at her and went no further down the floor. That was the job nobody wrote in the manual. You stood between your people and the machine that would grind them if it could. Back on the floor, the women had drifted toward the break area without being told to, the way people gather after a near miss. Kayla, the 19-year-old, sat on an overturned crate with her knees pulled up. She'd been at the sorting bay when the gala batch went through. In any other version of this day, hers was the name that would have gone in the file. They found them? Kayla asked. Her voice cracked on the second word. I found them. Danielle sat on the crate beside her. And I signed for them. Every one. If anyone asks, the paperwork says Carter. Not Kayla, you understand me? Kayla's eyes filled. But I sorted that batch. If something was missing. Nothing's missing now. That's the only tense that matters. Danielle handed her a folded towel from the warm pile. An old floor trick. Something to hold. Something to do. Listen to me. You did your job right. Somebody else did something wrong on purpose, and that is not the same thing, and I will not let anyone in this building pretend it is. Kayla wiped her face with the towel. Why would somebody do it on purpose? I don't know yet. Danielle stood, because if she stayed, she'd start explaining things she couldn't explain. But tags don't cut themselves off. Rosa caught her eye across the room and gave a small nod. The whole floor had heard. The whole floor would sleep tonight. That was the wage nobody paid Danielle for, and the only one she counted. She rode back down at 4:40, and only in the empty elevator did she let her shoulders drop. She had 30 minutes left on her shift. She spent 20 of them on the phone with the after-school program that watched Noah until 6, because the woman who ran it, Miss Adeline, wanted Danielle to know that Noah had gotten into a small argument. An argument. Danielle pressed the phone between ear and shoulder, restacking clean towels because her hands needed something. About what? A boy said Noah made up his father. Adeline's voice was gentle. Said nobody has a dad they've never met. Noah showed him the photo. You know the one he carries. Danielle stopped stacking. The photo. She knew exactly the one. A small square print, edges gone soft as cloth, that Noah kept in the breast pocket of every shirt he owned. She'd tried once to keep it safe in a drawer, and he'd cried like the world was ending. So now it went where he went, this creased image of a man and a woman she barely let herself look at anymore. Is he okay? He's fine, honey. He didn't cry. He just put the photo back in his pocket and said, he's real. I just haven't met him yet. A pause. 6 years old, and steadier than most grown men I know. He gets that from you. Danielle closed her eyes. Thank you, Adeline. I'll be there by 6. She was there by 6. The apartment building was a walk-up in a neighborhood the guidebooks skipped. 4 flights, a stairwell that smelled of somebody's good cooking and somebody else's cigarettes. Noah was waiting on the second landing where he always waited, sitting on the step with his backpack between his feet. And when he saw her, he stood up the way he always stood, careful, like a small man, and did not run to her, because he'd decided somewhere around age 5 that running was for babies. Hi, Mama. Hi, baby. She crouched anyway and pulled him in, and he let her, curly hair against her cheek, and for 1 second the whole day, the tags, the bin, Pell's coffee breath, the 6,000 things she was carrying, set itself down. Miss Adeline told you about the boy, Noah said into her shoulder. She did. I didn't hit him. I know. She told me you were the calmest person in the room. She pulled back to look at him. He had his father's eyes. She never said it out loud, but she saw it every single day, the dark almond shape, the way they held still on a face when he was thinking. Show me your hands. He showed her, clean, unbruised. Then, because he was 6 and honest, he reached into his shirt pocket and took out the photo and looked at it himself, the way he did, checking that it was still there and still true. He's real, Noah said. Not to her exactly, more to the photo. I know his face. I'd know him anywhere. I know you would, baby. She meant it, and it frightened her. Other children invented fathers who were astronauts and soldiers, faces they built out of longing. Noah didn't invent. Noah remembered a face he had never seen, the way you remember a word on the tip of your tongue, certain it exists, certain it's yours. She'd watched him study the photo since he was old enough to hold it, and what unsettled her was not the wanting, it was the confidence. You don't have to find him, she said, gentler now. You know that? You have me. You have everything you need. I know. He tucked the photo back into his pocket and patted it flat, a small ritual. Done. I just want him to know I turned out good. Danielle had to look away when he said that. She busied herself with the pan. She did not look at the photo. She had a rule about that, a rule she'd made the night she'd finally accepted that the man in it was never coming, a rule that let her get through days. She looked at Noah instead. That was the part of the past she could hold without it cutting her. They climbed the last 2 flights together. Inside, the apartment was small and clean, and hers, 2 rooms and a kitchen the size of a closet, a couch that folded into her bed, and the single luxury she'd allowed herself, a shelf of books high enough that Noah had to ask for them, which meant he asked every night. She made eggs because it was the end of the month, and eggs were what the end of the month looked like. Noah set the table without being asked. He lined the forks up straight, the way he lined everything up straight, and she watched him and thought, not for the first time, that her son moved through the world like a person putting it back in order after someone had knocked it down. Mama? When you were at the fancy hotel today, he climbed onto his chair. Did you see anybody famous? She almost laughed. I don't see the guests, baby. I'm in the basement. But if you did, He was working up to something. She could always tell. If you saw somebody real important, would you tell them about me? She set the eggs down. What kind of important? He shrugged. Suddenly small, suddenly 6. I don't know. Somebody who could find people. He pushed his eggs around. The boy at school said if your dad's real, somebody can just find him. That there's ways. Computers and stuff. He looked up. Is there ways, Mama? Danielle sat down across from her son. Outside, a bus went by, and its light swept the ceiling and left. She thought about the tags she'd chased backward through 6 checkpoints, the cold logic of it, the way you could follow a route until the truth stopped matching the manifest. She thought about a rack stenciled 1412 and a fire door propped fresh. She thought about how good she was, professionally, at finding exactly one thing, the object that was supposed to be somewhere and wasn't. There's ways, she said carefully, but some people don't want to be found, Noah. And finding someone who doesn't want to be found, that can hurt worse than not finding them. Noah considered this with the total seriousness he gave everything. He wants to be found, he said finally. He just doesn't know I'm here to find. Danielle didn't answer that. She couldn't. She got up and kissed the top of his head and said his eggs were getting cold, and he ate them, and the evening went on the way. Evenings went on, dishes and a book and the fold-out bed, and the small warm weight of him falling asleep against her arm, while she read a page she'd read 100 times. When he was under, she carried him to his bed in the corner and eased the photo out of his shirt pocket the way she did every night so it wouldn't get crushed in his sleep, and set it on the shelf where he'd find it first thing. And this time, she didn't plan to. She looked. The woman in the photo was younger than Danielle was now, laughing at something off camera, and it took Danielle a moment to remember that the woman was her sister who died when Noah was 2, her sister who had made her swear, in a hospital room that smelled like this apartment's stairwell, that she would raise the boy and never, ever go looking for his father, because his father, she'd said, was not a man you went looking for. His father was a man you ran from. And she'd never explained what she meant, and Danielle had never asked, because you don't cross-examine a dying woman, you just promise. The man beside her sister in the photo stood half-turned, as if he'd started to walk out of the frame at the exact moment it was taken. You could see the line of his jaw. You could see one shoulder, broad, and the collar of a dark shirt, open at the throat. And you could see, on the left side of his neck, rising from under that collar toward his ear, the black edge of a tattoo, a curve of it, a shape that might have been the tail of something, a dragon maybe. She'd never been able to tell. The photo cut it off. Danielle put the photo down face first, the way she always did, and told herself the same thing she told herself every night, that the man was a stranger, that the promise held, that the past was a closed door and she'd thrown out the key. She almost believed it. Her phone lit on the counter, a text from Rosa, sent after hours, which Rosa never did. Pell just posted the gala staffing for tomorrow night, the big Kang event. He put you on it. Floor lead, direct delivery, 14th floor. Danielle, he never puts you upstairs. Something's off. Watch yourself. Danielle read it twice. Then she looked, without meaning to, at the photo face down on the shelf, at the small square of it, at the 6-year-old asleep 3 feet away, with his father's eyes closed against the dark. The Kang Group, half the 14th floor. A private security room booked the same morning 7 garments walked off a route that never lost anything. And now her name, put upstairs by a man who hated her, into a room full of people she had no reason to fear, and every instinct suddenly screaming to avoid. She turned the phone face down beside the photo. She did not sleep. She sat on the edge of the fold-out bed with her hands folded and her back straight, the way she sat when a shift went wrong and she was walking the route backward in her head, checkpoint by checkpoint, hunting for the place where the truth stopped matching the manifest. Somewhere below the window a car door closed. Footsteps. Nothing. Tomorrow she would put on the one good thing she owned, the emerald jumpsuit she kept in a garment bag for the days the hotel wanted the floor lead to look like more than a woman from the basement, and she would ride the service elevator to the 14th floor, and she would deliver 7 perfect garments to the Kang Group with her own 2 hands. She told herself it was just a shift. She almost believed that too. The garment bag hung on the back of the closet door, and Danielle zipped it open at 5 in the morning before Noah stirred. She lifted the emerald jumpsuit off the hanger the way you lift something that might break. Then she pressed it flat against her chest and stood there, listening to the radiator knock. Noah rolled over. "Are you working the fancy floor tonight?" "I am." "Can I come?" "No, baby. Miss Adeline's got you." He watched her from under the blanket, one eye open. "You look scared." "I'm not scared." She was buttoning the front, and her fingers slowed on the third button. "I'm just early." He didn't argue. 6-year-olds know when a grown-up is lying and they let it go anyway, because they need the lie to hold. He got up, padded to the shelf, and took the old photo down. He slid it into the breast pocket of his ivory shirt without asking. She saw him do it and said nothing. By 7, she had dropped him at the after-school program's morning wing and taken the train downtown. By 8, she was in the sub-basement of the Crown Pacific, pulling the 7 gala pieces from the 14th floor log, the ones she had signed for herself at 4:10, the ones that had almost cost Kayla a job. Rosa found her at the pressing table. "You slept?" "Enough." "You did not sleep." Rosa set down a coffee and pushed it across the steel. "Pell's up there already, walking the Kang floor himself. He's smiling, Danny. I don't like when he smiles." Danielle wrapped both hands around the cup. "Did you find out anything more about 1412? "Nothing new. Security contractor, booked by the Kang Group, checked in and never touched the minibar." Rosa hesitated. "You still going up yourself?" "I signed for these." "I hand them over." "Send a runner." "I hand them over, Rosa." Rosa looked at her for a long second. Then she wiped her hands on her apron and went back to the line. And that was how Danielle knew Rosa was more afraid than she was letting on. Kayla drifted over while the presses hissed. 19, 3 weeks on the job, still learning which valves scalded. She had almost lost the job over the 7 pieces. She knew it. She stood close and pretended to check a seam. "Miss Carter, is it true they put you on the Kang floor?" "It's true. Rosa says nobody gets put there who Pell likes." Danielle folded a pillow sham that didn't need folding. "Then it's a good thing I don't need Pell to like me." Kayla almost smiled. Then her face went serious again, young and open. "If anything happens up there, if he tries to hang the 7 pieces on somebody, you'll tell them I did the triage right? I logged every one. Nothing's getting hung on you." Danielle put the sham down and looked at her straight. "I signed your lot with my name. Whatever comes, it comes to me first. You go home tonight and you sleep. That's an order." Kayla nodded and went back to her station, and Danielle stood a moment longer with her hands flat on the warm steel and told herself again that this was just a shift. The 14th floor did not look like a hotel floor anymore. The corridor carpet had been overlaid with a runner of black felt, and men in dark suits stood at intervals with their hands folded low. Danielle pushed the garment cart off the service elevator, and one of them stepped in front of it before the doors had fully opened. "Staff entrance is at the end. I'm floor lead. These go to the staging closet, direct handoff." She kept her voice level, kept the cart moving an inch at a time so it read as routine and not retreat. "You can walk me there." He walked her there. The staging closet had been converted into a check station, a folding table with a tablet, a woman in a headset who scanned each garment tag against a manifest and said, 7, confirmed, without looking up. Danielle should have turned around then. The job was done. The 7 pieces were logged, scanned, out of her name. Instead, she stood at the table 1 beat too long, because down the corridor a set of double doors had opened into a suite, and through them came voices, and one of them stopped her spine cold before her mind caught up. Low, even. A man saying, in accented English, "Then we move the vote to Thursday," not before. She had never heard that voice in her life, and still something in her chest reorganized itself around it, the way a room reorganizes around a sound you heard as a child. The woman with the headset said, "That's everything, ma'am. You can go." Danielle did not go. A boy came out of the suite first. Charcoal gray little suit, white shirt, dark tie, a gold brooch pinned at the lapel, straight black hair with a soft fringe. He walked with the careful straightness of a child who has been told all morning not to wrinkle anything. Behind him came a woman, slender, elegant, black hair pinned half up, a champagne gown that cost more than Danielle made in 3 months. Her eyes swept the corridor once, fast, the eyes of someone counting exits. And then the man. He filled the doorway. Black dress shirt, sleeves down, 2 buttons open at the throat. And there, on the left side of his neck, rising from under the collar toward the ear, Danielle's hand found the edge of the folding table. She knew that mark, not from meeting it, from a photograph in a 6-year-old's breast pocket, cut off at the collar, the black tail of something climbing a stranger's neck. She had spent 4 years not looking at that photo. She had memorized it anyway. The man's gaze passed over the staff, over the cart, over her, and moved on, indifferent, the way you look through furniture. Pell materialized at his elbow, all teeth. "Mr. Kang, if there's anything at all the floor team can—" "There isn't." Min-jae did not slow. Danielle heard herself speak before she had decided to. "Kang Min-jae." The corridor went still, not silent. An ice machine hummed somewhere. But still, the way a held breath is still. The suited men turned as one. Pell's smile cracked at the hinge. Min-jae stopped. He looked back at her, and for the first time his eyes actually landed. "You have me at a disadvantage. You don't know me." She let go of the table. Her legs held, which surprised her. "You knew my sister." Something crossed the elegant woman's face, Heir, though Danielle did not yet have the name. A flicker, quick, gone. Min-jae's expression did not change at all, and that flatness was its own answer. "I don't discuss my private affairs with hotel staff." He turned. "Her name was on a lease with yours." Danielle's voice climbed, and she pulled it back down. 4 winters ago, she died 2 years after that. And she left me something. "Ma'am," one of the suited men had a hand out now, low, hurting. "Step back. She left me your son." The words went out into the corridor and could not be pulled back. For a moment nothing happened. Then Min-jae turned around fully, slow, and the indifference was gone, and what replaced it was worse. A stillness that had weight, like the ground before a train. "Say that again." "I have a 6-year-old boy." She kept her eyes on him and only him. "Golden skin." "Your eyes." "He carries a photograph of 2 people. One of them is my sister. The other one is a man whose face is turned away, and the only thing you can see of him is the mark on his neck." She did not point, she did not have to. "I have looked at that photo for 4 years and told myself it was nobody. I was wrong." The little boy in the gray suit was staring up at his father. Heir had gone very white and taken the child's hand. Min-jae took 1 step toward Danielle. Just one, close enough that she had to lift her chin. "My son," he said quietly, "is standing beside me." The boy in the gray suit pressed closer to Heir's leg. Heir's grip on his hand had gone tight enough to whiten her knuckles, and Danielle, who had spent 6 years reading the small tells of a child who wanted a father, read this too. The woman was not looking at Danielle. She was looking at the folder-shaped bulge under the old man's coat, and her mouth had thinned into a line that had practiced staying shut. "He's your nephew," Danielle said. "Isn't he?" Min-jae's head turned a fraction. "What did you say?" "The boy beside you. Everyone keeps calling him your son." She hadn't planned the words. They came from watching Heir's hand. "I raised one just like him. I know what a borrowed certainty looks like on a woman's face." Enough. Song-ho's voice had not arrived yet, but Heir's did. Sharp, protective, aimed at Danielle like a slap. "You will not speak about my child." "I'm not the one who brought children into a hallway," Danielle said. For one breath the 2 women held each other's eyes, and something passed between them that neither wanted. Recognition. Then Heir pulled Jiho behind her skirt and looked away, and the moment sealed over, and that was when the cane began its slow approach down the felt. She had not seen the older man arrive. He came from the far end of the corridor without hurry, a thin cane touching the felt runner with each stride, and the suited men opened for him the way water opens for a hull. Dark gray suit, hair combed back, gray at the temples. Deep lines cut around a mouth that was not built for smiling and did it anyway, a small dry curve. Min-jae. The old man's English was precise. "What is this?" "A misunderstanding, father." "It isn't," Danielle said. Song-ho stopped a careful distance from her and looked her over. Once, top to bottom, the apron gone now, the emerald jumpsuit, the gold hoops, the set of her shoulders, and she watched him revise something behind his eyes. He had expected a laundry worker. He was recalibrating. You are making an accusation, he said, in a corridor, to a man you have never met. He tilted his head. Do you know what that costs? Where we come from? I know what it costs where I come from too. She held his gaze. It costs me my job by tonight. I know that. I'm still standing here. Something in Song-ho's face approved of that, coldly, the way a man approves of a worthy hand at cards he intends to beat. He turned to Pell without raising his voice. You employ her. Not for much longer, sir, I assure you. Be quiet. Pell shut. Song-ho drew a slim folder from the inside of his coat, and Danielle understood, watching his hand, that the folder had been in that coat before she opened her mouth. He had walked out here carrying it. You claim my late son's, my son Min Jae's, connection to your sister. He opened the folder against his forearm. 4 winters ago, you said. I said. Min Jae was not in this country 4 winters ago. He turned the top page toward her, but not far enough to read, a magician's flash. Travel records, immigration stamps. He was in Seoul and Singapore the entire season your sister would have, a pause chosen for its cruelty, required his company. Another page. Messages. Between your sister and a man. Not my son. The name is here. You may read it, if you like. I don't want to read your papers. No, Song-ho closed the folder. I imagine you don't. You had them printed this morning, she said. The old man's cane paused, just barely, on the felt. It was the smallest thing, a hitch. Then it set down again, and his face rearranged itself into patience. Records take time to assemble. One prepares. It is called diligence. It's called knowing what someone's going to say before they say it. She held the pause he'd tried to steal from her. Diligence is when you gather papers about a question. You gathered papers about an answer. There's a difference, and a judge knows it even if a hallway doesn't. For the first time, the dry curve left Song-ho's mouth. He studied her the way a man studies a lock that turned out to have a second tumbler. Behind him, Heir had gone still as glass. Min Jae's eyes moved between his father's face and the closed folder, and stayed a beat too long on the folder. Father, Min Jae said, when did you have these made? Not now. When? Not, Seong-ho said, without turning to his son. Now. And the flatness in it was the same flatness Min Jae had used on Danielle a minute before, and Danielle watched the son hear his own weapon turned on him, and watched him file it, the way she'd filed the man in the elevator, somewhere behind the ribs. Min Jae had not moved through any of this. But his jaw had set, and when he spoke his voice had dropped a register. I would remember. He said it almost to himself, then to her, harder. I would remember your sister. You'd remember her. Danielle's throat ached. Everybody remembered her. And I don't? He let that stand. Then, which makes you a liar? The word landed, and she felt the corridor take his side. Pell exhaled through his nose. The woman with the headset had stopped pretending to work. Even the felt runner seemed to belong to them and not to her. You're the one holding papers you had ready before I spoke, Danielle said. For a half second, she would replay it for days. Something moved in Min Jae's eyes that was not certainty. It was there, and it was gone, sealed under. He looked at his father. Song-ho looked back, mild, patient, the folder already disappearing into his coat. Escort her downstairs, Song-ho said. Have Mr. Pell process her termination tonight. And, the cane lifted an inch and set back down. See that she signs a statement acknowledging the accusation was retracted. I'm not retracting anything. You will find, Song-ho said, turning away, that it is retracted whether you sign or not. They did not touch her. That was the strange courtesy of it. 2 men simply walked so close on either side that the corridor became a channel, and the channel led to the service elevator, and Danielle walked it with her chin up and her heart slamming, and the 7 gala pieces already forgotten behind her, logged and scanned and no longer hers. The little boy watched her go. She caught his face at the last. Ji-ho, round, careful, the gold brooch catching the light, and he was not looking at her the way the adults were. He was looking at her the way Noah looked at the photograph, like something he wanted to be true and had been told to stop wanting. The elevator doors closed on him. In the descending box, one of the men spoke, not unkindly. You should have taken the money route. There's always a money route with families like this. Instead he He shook his head. You said it in a hall. I didn't want their money. Then you want the boy to have a name. The man watched the floor numbers fall. That's a harder thing to buy, and a harder thing to sell. He glanced at her sideways. You know what they'll say downstairs? That you saw a rich Korean family and did the math. That the boy's a lottery ticket. He's not a ticket. He's a 6-year-old who eats eggs at the end of the month and carries a photo of a man he's never met. The man was quiet a moment. My daughter's 7, he said to the wall. Then, as if he'd said too much, his jaw closed. Everybody wants the money. That's how you know you're not thinking straight. The doors opened on the sub-basement. Off you get. She stepped out. Then she stopped, one hand on the door track, and looked back at him. You've done this before, she said. Walked somebody down. The man shrugged. It's the job. How many of them were lying? He didn't answer that. His eyes went somewhere else for a second, and when they came back, he pressed the button for 14 without meeting hers. Get a good lawyer, he said, low, just as the doors began to close. That folder came off a printer this morning. I carried the box up myself. The doors shut before she could ask him to say it again. She stood in the sub-basement corridor with her heart going and turned the sentence over. He carried the box up himself. A witness. A frightened one, already retreating 14 floors above her, but a witness. She filed it where she filed everything that mattered, in the place behind her ribs that never forgot. Pell was waiting by the pressing tables with a printed form and a pen. He clicked twice. Sit. I'll stand. You'll sit and you'll sign, and you'll be walked out the loading dock so no guest sees your face. He set the form down. You want to know the funny part? I put you on that floor, me, because I wanted the Kang account to see how sloppy this department runs, and I figured you'd drop a tray or mouth off and I'd have it on record. He almost laughed. I did not in my life expect you to accuse the man of fathering a child. That's a different magnitude of ending, Carter. That's a lawyers in the morning ending. Rosa had come up behind him. Marisol. Kayla, 19 and gray in the face. They had heard. Word travels fastest down a service spine. Sign it, Pell said. Danielle looked at the form, the line at the bottom where her name went. She had signed her name to everything her whole life. For the 7 pieces, for Kayla's lot, for Noah at the after-school desk, her name absorbing the risk so no one else had to carry it. She picked up the pen. She did not sign. You forged travel records, she said, slow, to no one, and to all of them. A man's father carries a folder into a hallway before a single accusation is spoken. You don't prepare a defense for a thing you've never heard. She set the pen down flat. I'm not signing that this didn't happen. I'm going to prove that it did. With what? Pell said. You've got a photograph of a neck. I've got a boy. She lifted her eyes to him. And boys have blood. So do fathers. She let the room hold it. I'm filing for a court-ordered paternity test, a judicial exam, not their lab, not their folder, a sealed one, ordered by a judge, run where their money can't walk into the building. Her voice did not shake now. The shaking had passed through her and out. Let them fly their travel stamps into a courtroom, and let them explain to a judge why a folder was ready before a mother opened her mouth. Kayla made a small sound. Rosa's hand found the edge of a table. Pell's smile was gone. You don't have the money for a lawyer. Then I'll find one who works for the story. She untied the apron she wasn't even wearing, an old reflex, hands needing a task, and folded it once over her arm. You can walk me out the loading dock. That's fine. But you tell Mr. Kang, and you tell his father, that I said this. The paper they carry is only good until someone opens the box they can't reach. She started for the dock door. The box is my son. Carter. Pell's voice cracked after her. Carter, if you file that, they will bury you. You understand? People like that, they don't fight fair. They fight forever. She was already at the door. She turned once, and for the first time all night something like calm had settled into her face. The terrible calm of a person who has stopped having anything left to protect but the one thing worth everything. Then I'd better file it before they finish their coffee. The loading dock led out onto a side street that smelled of rain not yet fallen. Rosa caught up to her at the mouth of the alley, breathless, coat half on. You can't go home like this. Rosa grabbed her sleeve. You think they'll wait? That old man had a folder ready, Danny. A folder. They've been building this since before you knew the boy's name. You put a target on. She stopped. On Noah. You understand? On Noah. Danielle went still. She had said it in a hallway. My son. Golden skin. Your eyes. She had held her boy up like evidence to a family that forged travel records before breakfast, and the little one in the gray suit had watched her leave with a face full of wanting, and somewhere upstairs, a man with a cane was already deciding what to do about a child he had just learned existed. She took out her phone. Her hand was steady, and she hated that it was steady. Miss Adeline keeps them till 6, she said. It's not 5. Danny. Call me a lawyer, Rosa. Any lawyer. The kind who answers at night. She was already walking, fast now, toward the train. I'm getting my son. Rosa kept pace, phone already out. Marisol's cousin does family court in the Bronx. Paternity, custody, the ugly stuff. He's cheap because he's angry. She was scrolling, thumbing. Angry is what you want tonight. Angry is exactly what I want. Danny. Rosa caught her arm again at the crosswalk. Listen to me for 1 second. If you file, the second a judge stamps that order, it's real. There's no unsaying it. Right now it's a woman shouting in a hall. Tomorrow it's the state of New York, asking Kang Min-jae for his blood. She searched Danielle's face. You sure? Because your sister told you to run. Her last breath she told you to run from this exact man. The light changed. Danielle didn't cross yet. My sister was scared, she said. She spent her whole life scared of them, and it didn't save her. It just meant she died with the truth in her mouth. She looked up the wet street toward the after-school building. I'm not raising Noah scared. He asked me if there were ways to find his father. There are. This is one. I'm not going to teach my boy that the truth is a thing you run from. Rosa's eyes were bright. She let go of the arm and put the phone to her ear. I'm calling him now. Go get Noah. As Danielle stepped off the curb, Rosa called after her, half a sob in it. And Danny, call him something before 6, okay? A father. Call him a father, not a case. Danielle lifted a hand without turning and crossed. The first drops came down as she reached the corner, and she did not feel them, and behind her, 14 floors up, a light still burned in a suite where an old man was turning a slim folder over in his hands, deciding, and a younger man stood at the window with 2 buttons open at his throat, looking down at a street he could not see, remembering a season he had been told he spent in Seoul, and finding, for the first time in 6 years, that he was not sure. Noah saw her face through the glass door of the after-school room and put down the crayon before she reached him. He knew the look. He had known it since he was small, the way a boy learns weather. She crouched, and he came into her arms without being called, and the rain she had not felt was in her hair now, and he touched it with one careful finger. You're wet, he said. A little. Did something happen? She held him a second longer than the answer needed. Miss Adeline watched from the doorway with a stack of folders against her chest and did not ask. Danielle stood, took Noah's backpack in one hand and his hand in the other, and walked him out into a street that had gone silver. They did not go home. Noah noticed at the second corner, because home was left and she turned right. He looked up. She kept walking, and the grip on his hand was the answer, so he stopped asking and started counting cracks in the sidewalk the way he did when the quiet in her scared him. She counted something too. 4 days. She had heard the number in the suite, and it had followed her down 14 floors and across a lobby and into the rain. Thursday. The Kang vote. Whatever they were building up there had a deadline, which meant her thing needed one too. The lawyer's office was a storefront between a check cashing place and a shuttered nail salon, glass painted with gold letters half flaked away. Marisol's cousin. Danielle had called him from the alley and he had said one word, come, and hung up, which she decided to take as a good sign. Inside smelled of old coffee and toner. A man in his 50s sat behind a desk, buried in accordion folders, sleeves rolled, reading glasses shoved up into gray hair. He looked at Danielle. He looked at Noah. He looked at the boy's eyes for a beat too long, then back at her, and something in his jaw shifted. Sit, he said. Not the boy. There's a machine, with juice in the back. Raphael will show him. A young man appeared, grinning, and held out a hand to Noah like they were old friends. Noah looked at his mother. She nodded. He went. The lawyer waited until the boy was gone, Then he laced his fingers on the desk. Marisol says Kang. Kang. Marisol says you said it to their faces. Today. In their hotel. Yes. He took the glasses off his head and set them on the desk with a small click, like a man laying down a card. You understand what that family is, not the newspaper version, the version where a floor lead disappears from her job and nobody in this city will hire her to fold towels. I'm already fired. That was the towels. He pulled a legal pad toward him. Tell me what you have. Not what you feel, what you have. She told him. She told it clean, the way she had walked the checkpoints backward the day before. One thing, then the next thing. A boy of 6, a photograph, a face turned away with a mark climbing the neck, a woman dead 4 years who made her swear to run, and a folder that came off a printer this morning, carried up in a box by a security guard with a 7-year-old daughter who had said so, out loud, in an elevator, to her. The lawyer wrote nothing for a while. Then he wrote one line and turned the pad so she could read it upside down. It said, "Petition for court-ordered paternity test. This," he said, "is the only ground they can't buy out from under you. A private test, they'll say you faked. A test their lab runs, they own the result before the swab is dry. But a judge orders it. A judge picks the lab. The seal goes on in front of an officer of the court." He tapped the line twice. The box they can't reach. The words landed in her the same shape she had said them in the loading dock. She did not tell him she'd already thought it. She let him have it. How long? To file. Tonight. If the night clerk likes me, and he owes me. To get an emergency order. A friendly judge. Maybe 2 days. To swab and seal and run rush. Another 2. He watched her face. You have a deadline I should know about. Thursday. His pen stopped. Why Thursday? They have a vote Thursday. The family. Something about who runs it. He sat back. For the first time, the raggedness went out of him and left something colder and more useful. Succession, he said, half to himself. They're voting the succession. He looked at her, and the grin that came was not a nice grin. Then your boy isn't just a boy to them. Your boy is a problem with a date on it. He pulled a blank form from a drawer. That changes what we file. We don't just ask for a test, we ask for it fast, and we say the word succession in the papers, so a judge understands why fast. They'll fight it. They'll fight everything. Let them. Every day they spend fighting a swab is a day they explain to a court why a rich man is afraid of a cotton bud. He clicked the pen. Sign where I point, and bring the boy back in. I need to look at him once more, and then I need a photo of him and his mother, today, with a date on it, because in 6 weeks, they'll swear he doesn't exist. She signed where he pointed. Noah came back with a purple mouth from the juice and sat on her lap, while the lawyer typed with 2 fingers, fast, cursing the keyboard in Spanish. Outside, the rain came harder and slid down the gold letters. Danielle watched the street through the flaked glass and did not see, 14 floors up and 40 blocks north, the thing already moving toward her. Because up in the suite, Song-ho had made a call. He had not raised his voice. He never did. He had set the slim folder down on the table where his son could see it, and he had said, to a man on the phone, that the woman would file something in the next 12 hours, that she was not stupid, only poor, and that poor and not stupid was the most inconvenient combination a person could be. He said to let her file. He said filing was public. He said a thing filed in a court could be answered in a court, and the Kang family had more court than God. Then he looked at Min-jae, who was still at the window. You're quiet, Sung-ho said. You told a court she was a liar before a court asked. I told a court she was a liar because she is one. Min-jae turned from the glass. When did you have the folder made? The old man's face did not move. Does it matter? You keep not answering. That's the 3rd time. Min-jae came away from the window. On the far side of the room, Hyerin had gone very still with her hand on Jiho's shoulder, and Jiho was watching the 2 men, the way children watch the sky before it decides. You had travel records ready, immigration stamps ready, messages between her sister and some other man, ready, in a folder, before I even knew there was a boy. Min-jae's voice stayed low. That was the frightening thing about it. Everyone in the room felt it. The lower it went, the more it weighed. You built the answer before I heard the question. I protected the family. From what? Song-ho picked up the cane. He did not lean on it. He held it across his palms like a thing being weighed. From exactly this, he said. From a son who looks at a woman with a sad story and a pretty boy and forgets what he is. You are not a man, Min-jae. You are a chair that other men are voting for on Thursday. Do you understand? A chair. And she is a scratch on the chair. Then let the test happen. Let a judge scratch it out. The cane stopped moving. For a moment, the only sound was the rain on the wide glass and Jiho's small breathing. Hyerin looked from her father-in-law to her brother-in-law, and her mouth opened and closed. She had something to say. She swallowed it. She had been swallowing it for 4 years. No test, Song-ho said. Why? Because there is nothing to test. He turned to leave, and it should have ended there, the way things ended when the old man decided they had ended. But he added one thing, quietly, over his shoulder, and it was the wrong thing, and part of him, a moment too late, knew it was the wrong thing. You have a son. He is standing right there. Look at him, and stop grieving a woman who used you and died. Min-jae looked at Jiho. Jiho looked back at him with his father's straight black hair and his mother's careful eyes and the little gold brooch pinned to his charcoal suit, and Min-jae felt the thing he was not supposed to feel, the thing he had never let himself set down and examine in 6 years, which was that, when he looked at this boy, he loved him the way you love a nephew, wholly and from the side, and never once, not one single time, had loved him the way the word son was supposed to weigh. He said nothing. He had learned silence from the man leaving the room. But when the door closed, Min-jae stayed looking at Jiho a beat too long, and Hyerin saw him do it, and her hand tightened on her son's shoulder until the boy shifted, and in that grip was everything she had never said. Down in the storefront, the printer woke up and pushed out 4 pages. The lawyer squared them, read them once, grunted, and slid them across. Petition, motion to expedite, proposed order, and this. He tapped the last page. Declaration. Your words, my grammar. You swear it's true, you sign. If you lied, you go to jail, so don't lie. He handed her a pen. You didn't lie to me. Don't start now to make it sound better. She read it. Every line was a thing she had lived. She signed. Now, he said, standing, reaching for a coat that had seen better decades. We go to the night clerk. You bring the boy. A judge who sees a tired boy at 9 at night understands urgency better than any word I can type. He looked at Noah. You okay to come somewhere boring, hombre? Noah considered this with great seriousness. Is there juice? There is terrible juice. Okay. The courthouse at night was a different animal. Half the lights off, a single window lit at the clerk's office, a guard reading a paperback who waved the lawyer through with the weary nod of a man who had waved him through many times. The clerk was a heavy-set man with kind, tired eyes who took the pages, read the caption, and looked up sharply at the word Kang, then longer at Danielle, then at the boy asleep now against her shoulder with the photograph half out of his shirt pocket. You know what you're doing, the clerk said. It was not a question. No, Danielle said, but I know what happens if I don't. The clerk stamped the pages. The sound of the stamp was enormous in the empty room, and Noah stirred and did not wake, and Danielle felt something come loose in her chest that had been clenched since a security station said 7, confirmed. It was filed. It existed. It had a number now. A thing with a number could not be unhappened by a man with a cane. Emergency hearing, the lawyer said. Judge Okafor's calendar. She doesn't like being lied to, and she doesn't like being rushed, so we'll be lied to and rushed by the other side, and she'll hate them for it. He gathered the copies. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. Bring the boy. Bring the photograph. And Danielle. He waited until she looked at him. Sleep. You're no good to him. Wrecked. She did not sleep. She sat on the fold-out with Noah breathing beside her and the copy of the filing on her knees, and she read the caption over and over, her name and then his, Carter, a minor, and across from it, the name that had turned away from her in a photograph 6 years ago, and again, in a suite that afternoon. Somewhere north of her, a man stood at a window not sleeping either. She did not know that. She only knew her own not sleeping, and the 4 days, and the boy. Morning came gray and washed. She dressed Noah in the ivory shirt and the caramel suspenders because the lawyer had said bring him looking like what he is, a loved boy. And she put on the emerald jumpsuit again because it was the one thing she owned that said she had not been beaten yet. She fed him the last of the eggs. She checked his pocket for the photograph twice. "Where are we going?" Noah asked, on the stairs. She had promised herself she would not lie to him anymore, not about this. She crouched on the third landing so they were eye to eye. To see a judge. What's a judge? Someone who decides what's true when two people say different things. Noah thought about it. Do we say the true thing? We say the true thing. Then we win, he said, with the total confidence of 6, and she had to look away and pretend to fix his suspenders, because if she looked at his face, she would come apart on the stairs, and she could not afford to come apart on the stairs. The courthouse by day was a river. Lawyers and families and cops and clerks moved through the marble hall, and Danielle held Noah's hand and let the lawyer cut a path. Outside courtroom 4, he stopped, straightened, and became someone else, taller, meaner, the raggedness a costume he took off at the door. "They're here," he murmured. She saw them before she understood she was seeing them. Not the family, their lawyers, a wall of dark suits and rolling cases, 3 of them, 4, and behind the wall, one figure who did not belong to it because he was not carrying anything and not talking to anyone, standing apart with 2 buttons open at his throat and the mark rising at the side of his neck, watching the doors. Min-jae had come himself. The lawyer breathed out slow. "That's not procedure," he said quietly. "The principal doesn't come to an expedite hearing. He sends the wall." He glanced at Danielle. He came to look at the boy. "Then let him look." Noah felt the change in his mother's hand and looked up, and followed her eyes across the hall to the tall man by the doors, and stopped. He didn't ask. He reached into his shirt pocket instead, and took out the photograph, and held it up next to his own face, and looked from the picture to the man and back, the way the lawyer had looked at him the night before, a small person doing arithmetic. And Min-jae, 40 feet away across a marble hall, saw a 6-year-old hold a photograph up beside a face that had his own eyes in it, and something happened to the tall man's stillness. It cracked, just for a second. His hand came halfway up off his side and stopped. The wall of lawyers noticed nothing. Walls never do. "Inside," the lawyer said, low and fast. "Now, before someone tells him to stop feeling that." They went in. Courtroom 4 was smaller than Danielle had imagined and older, dark wood and a high bench and a clerk who took their names in a bored voice that made the whole thing feel survivable. The Kang lawyers filled the far table and unpacked it like an army setting up a gun. Min-jae sat behind them, at the rail, alone, which one of the lawyers turned and quietly told him not to do, and which he did anyway. Judge Okafor came in without ceremony, a tall woman with reading glasses and no patience, and read the caption, and her eyebrows went up 1 exact millimeter at the name, and came back down. She had seen the name before. Everyone in this city had seen the name. "Emergency petition for a court-ordered paternity test," she said. "Minor child. Motion to expedite." She looked over the glasses at the wall of suits. "Somebody over there wants to tell me why 4 lawyers came to argue against a swab." The lead suit stood, smooth as glass. He said the petition was harassment. He said the mother was a disgruntled former employee, dismissed for cause, weaving a fantasy around a wealthy family. He said there existed documentary evidence, travel records, immigration stamps, correspondence, establishing that his client could not be the father, and he moved that the court review that evidence before subjecting an innocent family to an intrusive and defamatory test. He slid a folder toward the bench. Danielle's lawyer stood before the folder finished sliding. "Your Honor, the evidence he's so eager to show you was printed yesterday morning." The suit didn't blink. "Counsel has no basis. I have a witness who carried the box up in the elevator." He let it sit 1 second, "But we don't need him today, because here is the beauty of what my colleague just did." He turned, half to the judge, half to the room. "He brought you a stack of paper about where a man was 4 winters ago. We are not asking the court to believe my client. We are not asking the court to believe his paper. We are asking the court to order a test that believes nobody. A swab, a sealed tube, a lab you pick. Result nobody can touch." He spread his hands. "If his paper is true, the test proves it in a week, and my client goes home ashamed. Why is a family with nothing to hide fighting a cotton bud? The judge looked at the wall. The wall started to answer. She held up one finger, and it stopped answering. "Sit down, all four of you," she said. "You're making my point for me." She took the glasses off. "Motion to expedite is granted. Court-ordered test. Court selected lab. Sample taken under seal within 48 hours, results rushed. Filed with this court and this court only." She looked at Danielle for the first time. Direct, unhurried, weighing. "The child is here?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Bring him." Danielle stood, and Noah stood with her because his hand was in hers, and she walked him to the space before the bench, and the whole room turned. The wall of suits turned. Min-jae, at the rail, leaned forward without deciding to. The judge looked down at the boy over the high bench. Her voice changed, only a little, the way a hard voice changes for a child. "What's your name?" "Noah Carter." "How old are you, Noah?" 6. He held up the right number of fingers to be sure. "Do you know why you're here?" Noah looked up at his mother. She nodded. He looked back at the judge and reached into his pocket, and this time he held the photograph up toward the bench, toward the whole room, so everyone could see the woman smiling and the man half turned away with the dark mark climbing out of his collar. "To find my dad," Noah said. "My mom says some people don't want to be found, but I think if he saw me he'd want to. I came out good." He said it plainly, the way you report a fact, and behind him, a sound came from the rail. Small, involuntary, a man's breath breaking, and Min-jae put a hand over his own mouth and pressed it there. The judge looked at the photograph a long moment. She did not take it. She looked at the mark in the picture, and then, slowly, unmistakably, she lifted her eyes past the boy, past his mother, to the man at the rail, with 2 buttons open and the same mark alive at the side of his neck. She looked at the photograph. She looked at the neck. She said nothing, because a judge says nothing. But everyone in courtroom 4 followed her eyes and saw the arithmetic finish itself. The lead suit stood up too fast. "Your Honor?" "Sit." He sat. 48 hours, the judge said. Sample under seal. I want this child treated gently, and I want the tube treated like evidence, because it is. She put her glasses back on, which meant it was over. And counsel. She looked at the wall, and then, deliberately, passed it to Min-jae. Whoever printed that folder, if it turns out to be what I think it is, I will remember it in every ruling I ever make about this family. We're adjourned. The gavel came down. The room broke into motion, the suits sweeping papers back into cases, talking fast and low over Min-jae's head about appeals and stays and the vote. Always the vote. Thursday. We cannot let this touch Thursday. But Min-jae was not listening to them. He had stood. He was looking at the boy who had held up a photograph and said, "I came out good," and his hand was still half raised, and Danielle put herself between the man and her son, without hurrying, calm, the way she had put her own name on Kayla's lot, her body a signature. For 1 second, she and Min-jae were 4 feet apart and no lawyers between them. He looked at her, not with the contempt of the sweet. Something had gone out of his face and left it younger and worse. "Is his hair like that when it's wet?" he said. It came out of him before he could stop it. Quiet. Wrecked. A question with no strategy in it at all. "In the picture, her hair. I can't." He stopped. "He's mine to answer for," Danielle said. "Not yours. Not yet. The tube will say when." A suit had him by the elbow now, steering, hissing about the exit and the press and the vote, and Min-jae let himself be turned because he did not trust his own legs, and at the door he looked back once, and it was Noah he looked at. And Noah, not knowing any of the weight of it, lifted the photograph and gave the tall man a small, uncertain wave, the wave you give someone you think you might know. Then the doors swallowed the suits and the man, and the courtroom was empty except for a mother, a boy, and a raggedy lawyer, letting out a breath he'd held for an hour. 48 hours, he said. He was grinning, but his hand shook, lighting the cigarette he wasn't allowed to light in here, and put away again. "Do you understand what she did up there, with her eyes? She can't rule on a photograph, but she looked, and every person in this room saw a judge look at that man's neck and that boy's picture, and not need the tube." He gathered the copies. Their whole game was to keep this private and slow. She made it public and fast. 48 hours, and their vote is Thursday, and now those two things are in the same room. Danielle crouched and put the photograph back in Noah's pocket, and buttoned the pocket, and held the button a second. You did good, she told him. Did we win? We told the true thing. She stood, and took his hand, and looked at the closed doors the suits had gone through. Now we find out what it costs. Outside, the rain had stopped, and the street steamed. Her phone buzzed. Rosa, she almost let it go. She answered. Danielle. Rosa's voice was wrong, too quiet, the voice from the alley. The guard, from the elevator. The one with the little girl. The one who told you he carried the box. A breath. He didn't show up for his shift this morning. And Danielle, his lockers cleaned out, like he was never there. Danielle stood on the courthouse steps with her son's hand in hers and the sealed tube not yet drawn, 48 hours on one clock and 4 days on another, and understood that the man with the cane had already answered her filing, not in a court, where he could be beaten, but somewhere below courts, where he had always lived. Rosa's voice was still in her ear when Danielle turned and looked back up at the courthouse doors, and she made the decision on the steps before her heart caught up to it. She would not go home. Home had a mailbox, a stairwell, a window a man with a cane could point a stranger at. She tightened her hand around Noah's and went back inside, past the metal detector, to the clerk who had stamped her papers the night before. The lab, she said, the one the judge chose. How fast can they take the sample? The clerk checked a screen. He told her the collector worked out of a county annex 4 blocks east, and that a court order with a 48-hour clock got a walk-in slot the same day. He wrote the address on a slip. He looked at Noah, then back at her, and lowered his voice. Take the boy now, before anybody decides the boy is hard to find. She took the boy now. The annex smelled of floor wax and old coffee. A technician in blue gloves peeled a sealed kit open in front of them, showed Danielle the intact tamper strip, and let her read the serial number off the tube, while a second man wrote it into a log. That was the part that mattered, not the swab, the chain. Every hand that would touch this tube was going to sign for it, and no Kang dollar could reach inside a number that a court was watching. Open, the technician told Noah, gentle. Noah opened his mouth. The swab went along the inside of his cheek, 4 seconds, and came out. The man capped it, cracked the seal band over the cap, and held it up so Danielle could photograph the number a last time. Say ah, Noah said to the swab, and laughed at his own joke, and nobody in the room laughed, and he stopped. The tube went into a pouch. The pouch went into a courier bag. The bag left through a back door with a runner who did not give his name. 48 hours, the judge had said. The technician said less. You'll have it faster. Court rush, they flag these. Outside, on the sidewalk, Danielle's phone buzzed against her palm. The lawyer, she answered walking, Noah's hand in hers, both of them moving east away from the annex without a plan for where east went. Where are you? The lawyer said. On the street. Don't be on the street. His breath came short, like a man climbing stairs. I made a call I didn't want to make. Listen to me before you say no. She stopped walking. Noah leaned against her leg. The judge tore the roof off this thing this morning. The lawyer said, it's public now, it's fast now, and that cuts 2 ways. It means the Kang money can't bury you quiet. It also means the boy is worth something to somebody as a problem that goes away. Your witness already went away. You saw that. I saw that. So I called the other side. The word landed wrong. She pulled Noah in against her hip. You called them. I called the one who isn't the old man, the lawyer said. The father, not the grandfather. There's daylight between those two now, and I put my hand in it. He offered protection. A floor at the hotel, his people on the door, a car when you need one, his name on it, not the old man's. He called me a liar this morning. He watched your kid hold up a photo this afternoon and put his hand over his mouth, the lawyer said. People change between morning and afternoon, not all the way. Enough. Danielle looked down the block. A town car sat at the far corner with its engine running, and it had been there since she came out, and she had told herself it was nothing. It was not nothing. There's conditions, she said. There's always conditions. Tell me yours. She told him. She talked fast, on the sidewalk, in front of her son, because slow was how you lost things. Her own floor, not his. A door that locked from her side. Noah in no room she could not see into. No paper put in front of her. Ever. Not a receipt. Not a menu she had to sign. Nothing with her name and a Kang letterhead on the same page, because she had learned what a folder could be. No one spoke to the boy without her in the room. And the car that was following her right now stopped following and started waiting, out front, where she could see it. That last one, the lawyer said. The car's already his. He sent it after the hearing. He didn't tell me to hide it. Then he can tell me himself, Danielle said. Not you, him, tonight. She hung up. She looked at the town car. She did not walk to it. She walked past it, Noah's hand in hers, and let the driver decide whether a man's protection meant chasing a woman down the street or following her at the pace she set. The car pulled out slow and stayed a half block back, patient, and that told her something the lawyer's whole speech had not. It told her the driver had been told to let her lead. The floor was the 12th, 2 under the Kang suites, and the door did lock from her side. She checked it twice. She walked the 2 rooms with Noah trailing her, opening the closet, looking behind the drape, running the bath tap and turning it off, doing the thing her body needed to do before her mind would sit down. A tray came up. She met it at the door and read it before she let it in. Food, no paper, the way she'd said, and the woman who brought it kept her eyes down and left fast. Noah ate. Noah, who had eaten eggs at the end of every month of his life, ate a plate of food that had a name he couldn't say, and told her it was good, and then told her it was too much, and left half. She wrapped the half in a napkin out of a habit older than this hotel, and then she caught herself doing it, in a room somebody else was paying for, and she stopped, and she left it. At 8, a knock. 1 knock. She put Noah in the inner room with the door open a hand's width and answered. Min Jae stood in the hall with no advisors behind him. Black shirt, 2 buttons, the mark at his neck where it always was. His hands were empty. That was the first thing she checked. Empty hands. You said tonight, he said. You said me, not the lawyer. I did. He didn't come in. He stood in the door and let her hold it. The car followed you 11 blocks, he said. You didn't get in. Why? Because a car you get into goes where the car wants. Something moved in his face, not a smile. The place a smile would start. My father would have made you get in, he said. I wanted to see if you knew the difference. I know the difference, she said. The question is whether you do. Behind her, in the gap of the inner door, Noah had come to look. Min Jae's eyes went past her shoulder and found the boy, and everything in the man stopped, the way a machine stops when the current cuts. Danielle watched him not step forward. She watched him hold himself at the threshold with a visible act of will, a man keeping his own hand down. He's up past his bedtime, Min Jae said, low. And it was such a small, ordinary, fatherly thing to say that it cost him. His jaw worked. He looked back at her. The test today, sealed? Sealed. Court chose the lab. You can't touch it. Good, he said, and she heard it, and didn't believe she'd heard it. Good, he said again, and this time she believed it, because the second time his voice broke on the word. Why did you say tonight, he asked, before he left. You could have made me wait. You had every reason. Because a man who won't come the same night he's asked is a man who's asking his father first, she said. You came alone. That's the whole reason. He took that. He held it the way she'd seen him hold the doubt in the suite 2 days ago, turning it, testing its weight. My brother used to say the same kind of thing, he said, and then looked as though the word had escaped him. Brother. And he had not meant to spend it here, in a borrowed hallway, in front of the woman suing his family. He closed his mouth over it. He gave her a number, his own, direct, not routed through anyone, and told her which of the men on the door had a daughter and would therefore actually watch her boy instead of a phone. Then he stepped back into the hall and let her shut the door, and she stood with her back against it for a long time, and understood that the ground had moved and she did not yet know which way it had tilted. She did not sleep. She had not planned to sleep. Somewhere below Courts, Seong-ho had already made a witness vanish, and a woman who waited for morning was a woman letting him work in the dark. So she worked in the dark too. She had photographed everything from the first day. She sat on the floor of the borrowed room with her phone and the boy breathing behind the cracked door and went back through the pictures of the folder, the one Seong-ho had opened in the suite, the one the guard had carried up in a box, the one that had been printed the morning it was shown, travel logs, immigration stamps, and the messages. The messages between her dead sister and some man who was not Min Jae, the ones meant to prove the boy had another father, any father, a paper father built to answer a question before the question was asked. She had thought of the messages as lies. Tonight she made herself think of them as objects. A lie is written by someone. It comes from somewhere. It has a shape. She zoomed in on the header of the printed message thread until it went to grain, and there, above the fake tenderness, above the forged names, was a line she had scrolled past 4 times because it looked like nothing, a small gray stamp of the service that had supposedly carried the words. A messaging relay, a company, not a phone, not an app anyone used, a relay, the kind of thing that sat between a sender and a receiver and kept copies. She wrote the name down on hotel paper. She did not know what it was. She knew that a forger who invents a conversation has to invent where the conversation lived, and that the laziest forger uses a thing he already owns. At 2 in the morning, she texted the lawyer the name. At 2:40, he texted back 3 words that changed the size of the room. That's a Kang shell. She sat with the phone in both hands. A relay company, owned, through 2 other names, by the Kang Group, which meant not by Min Jae, who ran the parts of the group that had a face, but by the part that had a cane. The forged messages hadn't been bought from a stranger. They had been manufactured in a house Song-ho already controlled, on a service Song-ho already owned, and the only reason anyone would route a fake conversation through a relay they owned was that they were used to routing real conversations through it, ones they wanted to keep, ones they wanted to be able to change later. The thought arrived whole and cold. Little did she know, when she'd stood on the courthouse steps that afternoon believing the fight was over her son's name, the fight had never been only about Noah. It had been about everything that passed through that relay, every letter, every message, for years, belonging to whoever the old man decided a child should be. She thought about the word Min Jae had swallowed in the hallway. Brother. A brother who used to say things. A brother, then, who did not say things anymore. She had never once, in 6 years, let herself wonder who the men in that family had buried to become the men they were now. She wondered now. She got up off the floor. She checked the boy. She sat back down and did the arithmetic she had been refusing to do since the suite. If Song-ho owned the pipe the messages ran through, and Song-ho would forge a father to keep a boy, then the question was not only, is Noah Min Jae's son? The question underneath it, the one nobody in that family had said out loud, was, whose son is the boy they already had? The one in the gray suit with the gold brooch, the one Min Jae had looked at too long and Heir had pulled by the shoulder away from that look. She did not go up to the 14th floor. She wrote 1 line on the hotel paper and folded it small. Morning came thin and gray at the window, and Danielle was dressed before it finished. She fed Noah, checked the door, and told the guard with the daughter that she was going up 2 floors and coming right back, and that the boy did not leave this room, did not open this door, for anyone whose face he did not already love. The man nodded once and set a chair against the wall, where he could see the door and the elevator both, and something in the way he did it, squaring the chair, sitting like the sitting was a job, made her trust him more than the whole floor of paid doors. She rode up 2 floors. The felt runner was still there. She did not go to the suite. She went to the small room at the end where the family's people took their coffee, because she had learned in 18 months of hotel corridors that the powerful are found in their staterooms, and the truth is found in the room next to the coffee. Heir was there, alone. Jiho, wherever Jiho was not with her, and the mother's face without the child in front of it was a different face, older, unstrung, a woman who had been holding a shape for a long time and had set it down for the length of 1 cup. She looked up and saw Danielle, and the cup stopped halfway. Danielle didn't sit. She stood across the small table and kept her voice under the walls. I'm not here about my son. Then leave, Heir said, but she didn't stand, and a woman who wants you gone stands. 4 years ago, Danielle said, somebody put a boy in your arms and a paper in your hand and told you what the paper said. Did you ever read it yourself? The real one, not what they told you it said, the lab paper, the one with a number on it. Heirin's cup came down to the saucer without a sound. Her hands were very still, the stillness of a person who has practiced being still. "You don't know anything about my son," she said. "I know you've never called him anyone's son but your own," Danielle said. "I heard you do it in the suite." "Don't speak about my son." "Not his son, not the family's son, yours." She leaned a fraction closer. "I'm not the enemy in this room. The enemy in this room walks with a cane, and he built a father for my boy out of a company he owns. And if he'd build one for mine, he built one for yours. And you've spent 4 years afraid to look because you already know." For a moment, Heir didn't move at all, and then the practiced stillness broke, not into tears, not into shouting, but into something smaller and worse. A single long breath let out through the nose, the sound of a person putting down a weight she'd carried so long she'd stopped feeling it until it was gone. "They never let me see it," Heir said. Her voice had gone flat, emptied. "The original. When Taehyun died, there was a report. Seong-ho held it. He read it to me." Her eyes came up. "He read it to me in his office, and then it went into a drawer. And every time I asked for the paper, he told me a widow shouldn't need a paper to know her own son." "But you're not the widow of the man in the paper," Danielle said, so quiet it was almost only breath. "Are you?" Hairin's hand came up over her own mouth. The same gesture, exactly the same gesture, that Min-jae had made at the courtroom rail. And Danielle understood in that instant that these two had learned to swallow the same thing in the same house from the same man. "I signed something," Heir whispered through her fingers, "after the funeral. Everyone signs things after a funeral. I couldn't read Korean legalese. I let the family's lawyer," she stopped, "a power of attorney, over Jiho's affairs, until he came of age. I thought it was money. Trust accounts. I thought—" "You thought it was money," Danielle said. "It was the boy." Heir looked at her, and 4 years of practiced silence went out of her face at once, and what was left was just a mother who had been told what she was allowed to know about her own child. "If you're wrong," Heir said, "you take everything from me, his name, his place. Everything he has because of what they say he is." "He read it to you," Danielle said again, slower, letting the woman hear it in her own ears. "A grown man read a widow a paper, and then decided the widow couldn't hold the paper. You didn't lose the right to see it, he took it. Those are different, and you've called them the same thing for 4 years because the second one lets you sleep." Hairin's chin lifted, and for a second the old shape came back, the elegant, unstrung, defended woman from the suite. "You don't get to tell me how I sleep." "No," Danielle said, "but I can tell you how I sleep. I don't. Not since the day I stood in that suite, and a man printed a father for my son, off a machine, and handed it around like a wine list. I've had 2 nights of no sleep, and you've had 1,400, and we're both sitting here doing the same math and calling it something else." "I'm not asking you to burn it down," Danielle said. She put the folded paper on the table between them, the one line she'd written at 2 in the morning, and slid it across. "I'm asking you to want to see it. Just that. The original, the one Seong-ho read to you and put in a drawer. You have a right to a paper about your own son that no other person on this earth has, and you have never once used it, because a man told you a widow shouldn't. Use it." Heir didn't touch the paper. She looked at it the way you look at a door you've walked past every day for years. "Why are you helping me?" she said. "I'm the reason your son doesn't have a name yet. My boy is standing in the place they say is his." "Because our boys are on the same side and neither of them knows it," Danielle said. "Because a man built a lie so big it needed 2 children to hold it up, and he's counting on the 2 mothers hating each other so we never stand in the same room and add it up." She straightened. "I just added it up, so did you. Right now, I watched you do it." The door at the far end opened. A man's voice, one of the advisors, called Hairin's name in Korean. Easy, unsuspecting. Danielle stepped back from the table before the man came in. She left the folded paper where it lay. She did not know, going out the side way she'd come, whether Hairin would pick it up or push it into the trash with the coffee grounds, and she made herself not look back, because a woman deciding to break a 4-year silence does it alone or not at all. She rode back down 2 floors with her pulse in her throat and let herself into the borrowed room and Noah ran at her legs like she'd been gone a week. The guard with the daughter was still squared in his chair, the door still shut, the boy still safe, and she put her hand on the back of Noah's soft curled head and breathed. Her phone buzzed. The lawyer. Sample cleared the lab intake, he said. Chain held. Nobody touched it who wasn't supposed to. They flagged it court rush like the tech said. A pause, and she could hear him deciding how much hope to spend. We'll have Noah's result before the vote. Which means the vote happens with your answer already in the room. Good, she said, and meant it the way Min-jae had meant it in the doorway, and heard how strange it was that the two of them now wanted the same locked box opened. Danielle, the lawyer's voice dropped. There's something moving up on the 14th floor. My guy heard it secondhand, so take it soft. Somebody up there pulled an old medical file. Not yours. Not Noah's. A beat. The other boys. Somebody's asking the family's own lab about a sample from 4 years ago. Her hand tightened on the phone. Was it the old man? She said. That's the thing, the lawyer said. It wasn't. The old man doesn't pull files. He buries them. This came from somewhere else in that family. Somebody with enough name to make a lab pick up the phone. He let it sit. You put a paper in front of anybody up there this morning? Danielle looked at the door. She looked at the boy at her knee and up 2 floors through a hotel's worth of concrete to a small room next to the coffee where she'd left one folded line on a table. I might have, she said. Then somebody just used it, the lawyer said. And Danielle, the second a lab that Sung-ho owns, gets asked about a 4-year-old sample, Sung-ho knows the question got asked. You didn't just open a door, you told the man with the cane which door you opened. The line went quiet. Down the hall an elevator chimed and stopped, on their floor, 2 floors below where any Kang had reason to be, and the guard with the daughter stood up out of his chair without being told and put his body between the sound and the room. Danielle drew Noah back from the door by the shoulder, the way she'd watched another mother do it in a suite 2 days ago, and understood at last that they had all been doing the same thing, in the same house, to the same children, and that the man who had made them all do it had just felt the floor shift under his cane. The elevator doors opened. A bellhop stood in the elevator with a folded roll-away cot and a stack of towels, blinking at the guard's shoulder blocking half the hall. 1206 requested a cot, he said. Nobody had requested a cot. The guard took the towels off the top of the stack and looked underneath them, then looked inside the cot's hollow steel frame, then stepped aside. The bellhop wheeled the cot to a door 3 down and knocked. A different family answered. Wrong floor on the ticket. Danielle's hand stayed on Noah's shoulder until the elevator closed again and the numbers climbed away. She let go finger by finger. Her son looked up at her with a piece of toast still in his fist. Was that a bad man? That was a man with a cot, she said. Eat your toast. She sat him back at the little table by the window, and she checked the chain on the door, and she checked it a second time, because checking it once had stopped meaning anything to her hands. Then she sat across from Noah and watched him chew, and did the arithmetic she had been doing since 2 in the morning. Someone had sent a cot to a floor that never asked for one. It might be nothing. In this house, nothing was nothing anymore. Her phone lit. The lawyer. She took it to the bathroom, ran the tap, and answered low. You sitting down? He said. I'm standing in a bathroom with the water on. Close enough. Paper moved on his end. The lab called the court. Court called me, because Okafor put my number on the order. Noah's result came back. The tap ran. Danielle watched it run. Say it. Match. 99.99 and a long tail of 9s. Kang Min-jae is the biological father of your boy. It's sealed. It's signed. It's in the judge's hands, and it is done. Danielle, you won the thing you filed for. You hear me? You won it. She had thought she would feel the floor come up to meet her. Instead, she felt the sink's edge under her palm, and the cold of the porcelain, and her own pulse in the wrist that held the phone. 4 years of a sister's voice in her ear saying run. A photo with a face turned out of frame, a courtroom that did the math out loud, and now a number with a tail of 9s making it a fact the way a birth certificate is a fact. When does he know, she said. The judge decides who gets told and when. But Danielle, a result like this, 1 day before the vote, with the tattoo already hanging in the air of that courtroom, it's not staying in a drawer. Somebody up on 14 already knows the tube came back. Money hears fast. Then he knows Noah is his. He'll know by tonight if he doesn't already. A pause. How you doing? She turned the tap off. In the quiet, her own breath was loud. I'm fine, she said, which was the first lie she had told him. She came out of the bathroom and Noah had turned his chair to the window and was watching the street 14 floors down, cars the size of his thumbnail, the photo of his parents propped against the water glass where he could see it while he ate. He did that now. Set the photo up like a place setting. She had stopped telling him to put it away. Mom, he said, not turning. If my dad is real, does he live in this hotel? The question landed square in her chest. Eat, she said. We'll talk about real when I know what real is. By noon, a woman from housekeeping came with a second tray and no paper, the way Danielle had demanded. And under the plate cover was a note that was not paper with a letterhead, but a plain hotel card in a hand she didn't know. 3 words. Heirin's room number. And beneath it, he pulled it. Danielle read it twice and put it in the zippered pocket, the inside one, and understood that the mother's arithmetic had started to move on its own. She left Noah with the guard who had a daughter, the one who set his chair to see the door and the elevator both, and she did not take the elevator. She took the service stair, the way she had walked a hotel her whole working life, and she came up onto 14 through a door that said staff only, and nobody stopped a woman in flat shoes who walked like she had a cart somewhere ahead of her. Heirin opened before the second knock. She had the door chained from the inside, the same instinct, the two of them separated by 4 inches of gap and a brass chain, 2 women who had learned the same lesson in different rooms of the same house. You saw my note, Heirin said. You pulled the file. Danielle kept her voice under the hallway. You asked the lab for the old sample, 4 years old, you. The chain came off. The door opened. Heirin stepped back to let her in, and Jiho was not there. The boy was gone, a child's coat missing from the hook, a tutor's schedule on the desk. She had cleared the room of her son before she opened her door to this. I asked for 2 things, Heirin said. The original report Sung-ho read to me and locked away, and whatever the lab still held of the sample it was drawn from. Her hands were flat on the desk, steadying her whole body through her fingers. The report, they say, was checked out 4 years ago and never logged back. Gone. But the sample, her breath caught and she wrote over it. A lab keeps a retention vial, frozen. Insurance, they call it, in case a result is ever challenged. Nobody told the old man to destroy the vial because for 4 years nobody ever thought to challenge a result the family paid for. Danielle's skin went cold and clear. It still exists. It still exists. Heirin's eyes were wet and steady. Jiho's blood from 4 years ago, sitting frozen in a building the Kang's own. So I did the thing you made me able to do. I signed the request as his mother. Not through the old man, not through the power of attorney. As his mother, which is a thing the paper never took from me. She pressed her knuckles to her mouth and took them away again. I ordered it run against Min-jae, a real test, the one they never let happen. For a moment neither of them said anything. Somewhere below a vacuum ran and stopped. You already have it back, Danielle said. It wasn't a question. She had seen it in the way the woman held the desk. Heirin turned the laptop around. Danielle read the way she read a manifest, top line first, the names, the barcodes, the numbers she had learned to trust more than faces. Alleged father, Kang Min-jae. Child, Kang Ji-ho. And down at the conclusion, the sentence with no tail of nines, the sentence built the other way. The alleged father is excluded as the biological father of the child. Probability of paternity, 0. 0, Danielle said. 0. Heirin said the word like it had been sitting behind her teeth for 4 years. Min-jae is not Jiho's father. He never was. I knew. I didn't know. I felt it. The way you feel a room is colder than the thermostat says. But I let a man read me a paper and lock it in a drawer, because a widow with a son and no name of her own does what keeps the boy fed. She sat down finally, all at once, as if the chair had caught her. And now I have the paper that says the truth, and I don't know if the truth feeds him or starves him. Danielle stood over the screen and made herself keep reading, because a number was one thing and a story was another, and a lab that got bought once could be argued crooked twice. She scrolled. There was a second document behind the first. Heir had pulled more than the vial. Travel and lodging records. Not the old man's forged folder. Real ones. A hotel's own archive. The kind a corporate group keeps for tax and never thinks anyone will read against them. A name she had heard exactly once, swallowed in a doorway at 8 o'clock the night before. Kang Tae-yoon. Room, dates, a signature. And the dates sat down over the calendar like a hand laid flat. Tae-yoon lodged in the city, in that hotel, across the whole window when a child was made. The dead brother, present. Where the living one had been sold as absent. He was here, Danielle said softly. The brother. When Jiho started. Tae-hyun. Heir said the name, and her whole face changed. Grief and something older than grief. My husband. The word landed and rearranged the room. Jiho is Tae-hyun's son, Danielle said. Not Min-jae's nephew, because Min-jae is the uncle. Jiho is Min-jae's nephew, because Tae-hyun was the father. She heard herself building it out loud, the way she'd built the shell company out loud 2 nights before. The old man buried your husband and kept the son, and told the world the son belonged to the living brother, the one with the tattoo and the vote, because a boy who belongs to a dead man can't hold a chair, but a boy who belongs to Min-jae can be held on Min-jae's behalf, by a man with your power of attorney in his drawer. Heir was crying without sound, the way people cry who have practiced not being heard. He needed 2 boys, Danielle said, and the cold in her went all the way down. 1 real son he could deny, Noah, and 1 nephew he could dress as a son. And he needed both mothers to hate each other so neither of us would ever put our 2 papers on the same table. She put her hand flat on the desk next to Heir's, not touching, just there. They're on the same table now, Danielle said. The door. Not a knock, a key. The lock disengaged from the outside with the small fat sound of a MasterCard, and Danielle had 1 second to think that a mother clears her son from a room but cannot clear a hotel of the men who own the doors. She stepped back from the desk. Heir closed the laptop with 1 motion. Min-jae came in. He came in alone, which no one on that floor ever did. No guard behind him, his sleeve pushed up on the arm that had opened the door with a card he should not have needed for this room. He stopped when he saw Danielle. His eyes went to the closed laptop and back to the 2 women standing too close together on the same side of a desk, and whatever he had come up to say left him. You found each other, he said. You have a nephew, Danielle said. She watched it hit. She watched a man who had spent 2 days holding a doubt like a stone in his mouth finally swallow it and taste what was under it. He looked at Heir. Heir didn't look away, and that not looking away was its own confession, 4 years of it. Say it to me, Min-jae said. His voice had gone very level, the way water goes level right before it goes over an edge. Not her, you. He was looking at Danielle now. You've had the numbers all morning. Say both. Noah's came back this morning. She kept her feet planted. You're his father. It's sealed. It's the courts. It's a fact now, not a claim. She let that stand 1 breath. And that vial. She nodded at the laptop. Is your brother's boy tested against you? You're excluded. 0. Jiho was never yours to hold. Your father knew. Your father read the true report to a widow and locked it in a drawer and handed you a nephew to raise as leverage and told you the son who was actually yours was a laundress's lie. The room was very quiet. Something happened in Min-jae's face that she had no clean word for. Not grief exactly. The look of a man watching a house he grew up in turn out to have been a set the whole time, the walls flat, the doors painted on. His hand rose halfway to his own throat, to the mark there, the way a man touches a scar to check it's still his, and stopped, and came down. 6 years, he said. I had a son for 6 years, and he told me the boy was a lie. He wasn't talking to either of them. And the boy I raised, his voice broke on the boy, and Heir flinched as if the crack had reached across the room and touched Jiho through her. The boy I raised was my brother's, my dead brother's, and I loved him wrong the whole time, and it turns out I loved him exactly right, because he's my blood, he's just the wrong grief. He's the wrong grief. He's a 6-year-old, Heir said, low and fierce, standing. Don't you make him a wrong anything. Min-jae looked at her. For a moment the 2 of them were the only people in the room who had loved Tae-hyun. and the air between them was thick with a man 4 years in the ground. "No," Min-jae said, gentler. "You're right. Not wrong. Mine to keep." He said it like a vow he was surprised to be making. Then he turned back to Danielle, and something in him hardened, gathered, became decision, and she felt the floor start to tilt before she knew which way. "The vote is tomorrow," he said. "You understand what these 2 papers do to my father in a room full of the men whose money he's been holding for 30 years. They end him," Danielle said. "They end him." Min-jae took his phone out, and they open a chair, a real one. A name that's actually blood, actually mine, actually clean, instead of a nephew held on a stolen proxy. He was already thumbing the screen, already moving, a man who had spent his whole life being told what a Kang does with a chair. "I'll name him tonight, before the vote. I'll walk into that room and I'll put my son's name in the line where my father put a forgery, and every man there will see what a real succession looks like, and the old man will watch it happen from the floor." "Name who?" Danielle said. Cold. Very cold. "Noah." He said it like a gift. He said it like the best thing a man had ever thought to do. Kang Noah. Heir. In front of all of them. Tomorrow. He looked up from the phone with something almost like light in his face. The wreck of the last 5 minutes turned all the way over into purpose. He wanted his father to know he came out good. "I'll do better. I'll show the whole family what he is. He'll never wear a laundry apron. He'll never—" His hand cut the air. "Carry anyone's 7 dresses down a service stair. He'll have the name, my name, tomorrow." And there it was. The floor went all the way over. "You didn't ask me," Danielle said. Min-jae stopped. "You have a court paper 12 hours old that says he's yours," she said, and her voice was steady the way it was steady the night she told an operations director she'd signed the whole lot in her own name. "And the first thing you do with it, the very first thing, is decide his life in a phone, in another woman's room, without one word to the person who raised him. You put his name in a room full of men who wanted him to not exist yesterday. You make him a Kang, for the shape of your vote. I'm making him safe. You're making him useful." She heard the whip in it and didn't pull it back. "That's what your father did." He looked at a boy and saw a chair. "You just did the exact same thing with a nicer feeling behind it. You looked at my son, and you saw a way to beat your father tomorrow." "That's not—" He stepped toward her and stopped himself, both hands open now, the phone forgotten in one of them. "Danielle, he's my son. He's been my son for 6 years." The words came up out of a place under the 2 in the morning, under the 4 years, under a dead sister's hand on her sleeve. "You've been his father for 12 hours, and you've already spent him. I gave you a floor. I gave you men at your door. On your terms, until I made them mine." She was shaking now, and she let herself shake, and kept her voice level over it. "I told you. No paper with your name on it for me to sign. I told you. Nobody talks to the boy without me in the room. And the first real thing you get to decide about him, you decide it alone, over a phone, and come tell me after, like a delivery I'm supposed to sign for." She laughed once. No humor in it. 7 dresses. You're right about one thing. I know exactly what it is to carry something down a stair for a family that never once asked what I wanted at the bottom of it. Heir had gone still against the desk, watching one mother do out loud what she had spent 4 years unable to do. "Danielle," Min-jae's voice dropped, stripped down, the level gone out of it. "I have spent 2 days learning I lost 6 years of my own child to a lie. Don't teach me the lie was worth keeping. I'm not teaching you anything." She was already moving toward the door. "I'm telling you what happens when a man decides a child is a prize. I watched my sister die of it. She made me swear to run from you, and I broke that oath in a courtroom because I decided my son deserved a father more than he deserved my fear. I decided that. Me. And you just showed me exactly what she was running from." Her hand found the door. "It was never that you'd hurt him. It's that you'd own him. Same as the old man. Just warmer. If you take him out of this hotel tonight, there is nothing between him and my father." Min-jae said it fast. The truth of it, and the threat of it, and the plea of it, all one sound. The old man knows the tube came back. He knows what tomorrow does to him. A cornered man with a name to save does not care whose child is in the way. "A cot came to my floor this morning that nobody ordered," Danielle said. So don't tell me your father can't reach the 12th floor of your hotel. Your floor, your men, your terms. I'm done being kept somewhere I don't hold the key to. Where will you go? Somewhere the doors are mine. She opened his. You want to name him something tomorrow? Name the truth. Stand up in that room and say what your father did. To her, to me, to my sister, to a boy who's had a photo of you in his pocket his whole life. Say that. Don't put my son's name in your fight like a flag. Give him the truth and let him choose the name when he's not 6. She was in the hall. She heard Heir say his name behind her, soft, and heard him not answer. She took the service stair down 2 floors so fast her knees felt it, and she came out on 12, and the guard with the daughter was on his feet before the door finished opening because a mother's face carries down a hall. Get his shoes, she said. We're leaving. Noah was already pushing his arms into his coat sleeves the wrong way because he had learned, in 6 years, to read her the way she read a manifest. The photo was in his fist. He looked up at her and didn't ask if the man was real anymore. He asked the harder one, Are we running? She got down on her knee in the middle of the borrowed room and turned his coat sleeve right side out and looked her son in his father's eyes. No, she said. We're not running. Running is what somebody made your family do for a long time. We're just going home, where the lock is ours. She zipped him. And tomorrow I'm going to go back into that building, in the front, in the green, and I'm going to make a room full of men hear the truth whether they vote for it or not. With the judge? With everybody. She stood and took his hand. You're going to stay with Rosa, and you're going to eat too much of Marisol's cooking, and you're going to be somewhere I know every door. And I'm going to go finish this. The guard walked them to the elevator and rode it down with his body between them and the doors at every floor, and in the lobby he handed Danielle a folded slip of paper, his own hand this time, a number. Not his, the guard said quietly, meaning Min-jae. Mine. My kid's the same age as yours. He looked at Noah and away. If a car follows you tonight, and it isn't one of ours, you call me before you call anybody. Danielle put it in the zippered pocket with the other cards, the whole small archive of people who had started choosing. And she walked her son out through the revolving door of the Crown Pacific into the evening street, where she had first carried 7 dresses down a service stair for these people, and did not look up at the 14th floor, and did not need to, because she could feel it up there behind glass, a father with a court paper and a phone, deciding, still deciding, what her son was for. The town car was at the curb. The driver had the door open before she reached it, the way she'd trained him, waiting where she could see him. She walked Noah straight past it. Ma'am, the driver leaned out. Mr. Kang said, I know what Mr. Kang said. She kept walking, her son's hand in hers, the city loud and hers and unowned around them. Tell him I'll see him in the room tomorrow. Tell him I'm coming in the front. Behind her the car idled and did not follow, and then, slow, uncertain, a machine waiting for an order that hadn't come, it began to roll, keeping her pace, 20 feet back, the way a thing follows that hasn't decided yet whether it's a guard or a leash. Danielle turned the corner where she could still see it in the glass of a darkened shop front and stopped and stood her son behind her hip and watched the car stop too. On the 14th floor a light was on. Her phone was buzzing in her pocket, his direct number, the one that didn't route through anyone, ringing and ringing against her thigh while she stood on a corner with everything she had left to lose holding the hem of her coat, and she let it ring, because she did not yet know if the man on the other end was calling to take it back, or to make it worse. She let the phone go quiet, then she answered it on the last ring, because a woman who runs is a woman who never finds out what the call was for. I'm on 9th, she said. Say it fast. His breath came through the line before his voice did. Don't take him home tonight. You don't get to pick where he sleeps. The vote moved, Min-jae said. Not Thursday, tomorrow morning. My father called it early. A pause, the kind a man takes when he is choosing which of 2 men to be. He thinks a fast room is a room you can't fill with the truth. Danielle watched the town car idle at the curb, 10 feet off, engine low. Then I fill it faster. You can't get in. It's family and the board. Doors, badges, a list. Put me on the list. The silence stretched. Noah tugged her sleeve, cold now, the photo corner poking from his coat pocket. Down the block a man in a doorway lowered his phone when she looked at him, and lifted it again when she didn't. I'll do worse than that, Min-jae said. I'll walk you in myself." She hung up before she could believe him. Believing him was the mistake the story kept offering her, and she had spent 4 days learning to take the offer only in daylight, with a lock on her side of the door. She did not sleep at Rosa's. She sat at Rosa's kitchen table with Noah asleep in the back room and 3 phones on the wood in front of her. Hers, Rosa's, and the burner the guard with a daughter had pressed into her hand on the sidewalk. At 4 a.m. the burner buzzed once. A photograph, a gray metal shelf, a locker, a strip of tape reading a name she knew. The guard's message under it. They cleared his locker. They didn't clear the camera pointed at it. She sat up straight. The missing witness, the man with the 7-year-old daughter, the one who'd carried the folder box to the 14th floor and then vanished mid-shift, had not vanished. He'd been driven 3 states south with an envelope of cash and a promise about his kid's school. But before he left, he'd done the one thing a frightened man does when he still wants to be a good father. He'd mailed himself a copy of what he saw, and he'd told the guard where. By 6, the guard had it. By 7, Danielle had a second envelope on the table beside Heir's laundered laptop, and inside the envelope was the thing that turned a mother's private grief into a public execution. The Kang boardroom was on the 4th floor of the tower, 2 avenues from the hotel, glass on 3 sides, a table the length of a bowling lane. Danielle came in the front. She wore the green. Marcus Pell was at the badge desk in the lobby, and his mouth opened to stop her, and then Min-jae's hand came down flat on the desk beside her elbow, and Pell's mouth closed. "She's with me," Min-jae said. He didn't look at Pell when he said it. He looked at the elevator like a man walking toward a thing he'd been avoiding for 6 years. "You understand what this costs you," Danielle said quietly in the rising car. I stopped counting. "Don't." She turned to him. "Count it out loud. In there. That's the whole thing. A man who counts what it costs and pays anyway, that's the only man I let near my son." He looked at the floor numbers climbing. "He raised me to believe the family was a wall. You put your back to it and nothing gets you." "And the mail?" she said. "He put a wall around the mail too." "I never asked what my father did with the letters." Min-jae's throat moved. "I was 34 years old and I never once asked." "Ask now," Danielle said. "Out loud, where they can hear you not know." The car slowed. He straightened his cuffs the way a man does before something he can't take back, and for a second his hand was not steady, and she let him see that she saw it and said nothing, because a woman who names every fear out loud teaches a man to hide them, and she wanted this one where the room could watch it. The doors opened. Song-ho was already speaking when they entered. He stood at the head of the table with the thin cane hooked over his forearm, and he did not stop for them. He was mid-sentence, laying out a succession as if it were weather. The boy Ji-ho confirmed. The line clean. The unpleasantness of recent days, a laundry worker's fantasy that lawyers would dissolve by lunch. 11 board members, 2 empty chairs, a screen behind him holding a family tree with 2 names at the bottom, and one of them crossed through. He saw Danielle. He saw the green. His voice did not change, which was the tell. A man who feels nothing adjusts nothing, and a man who feels everything hides it by adjusting nothing. And after 4 days, she could tell the two apart. "This is a board matter," Sung-ho said to his son. "You brought staff." "I brought the mother of your grandson," Min-jae said. The room moved. Chairs, breath, the small animal sounds of 11 people recalculating at once. Sung-ho set the cane's tip on the floor. "Sit down, Min-jae." "No." One word. Danielle watched it land. For 6 years, the son had said the second word after his father's first. He'd just stopped. Min-jae walked the length of the table. He did not raise his voice, and that was worse for the old man than shouting would have been. 4 days ago, a court ordered a test my father spent 3 years telling me he'd already run. It came back yesterday. The child this woman raised in a walk-up while my family bought a lab to lie about him. He's mine. Sealed, signed, in a judge's drawer. He turned to the board. "You'll vote today on a house built on the opposite fact. So first I'm going to hand you the fact." He laid the report on the table, not the copy. The court's certified duplicate, the one his own lawyers had fought to keep from him, released to him that morning by a judge who'd looked at a 6-year-old on a witness bench and decided the fast room would get filled after all. Song-ho didn't touch it. A number on a page from a woman with a lawyer paid in resentment. "We have travel records, we have..." Printed the morning of, Danielle said. It was the first time she'd spoken in the room, and every head turned, and she felt the old reflex to make herself smaller, and she stood in the green and did the opposite. You want to talk about paper, she said. Let's talk about all of it. She'd rehearsed nothing. She'd learned in 4 days that rehearsed was what Song-ho did, and the thing that beat rehearsal was a person telling the truth in the order it happened to them. 6 years ago, my sister loved your son, she said to Song-ho. She wrote him letters. He wrote back. You know how I know he wrote back? Because you kept the letters. She opened Hye-rin's laptop. The screen woke on a gray postmark, a relay service header, a shell name 2 owners deep. You didn't burn them. A man who burns things is a man who might need them. You ran them through a company you own, so that every word between 2 people belonged to you. And when my sister got pregnant, you didn't want the child gone. You wanted him. Deniable. So you let her run. You let her think your son was a man to flee. She died believing it. She made me swear to keep Noah away from a monster. Her voice did not break, and the not breaking was louder than tears. The monster was never your son. It was the man reading the mail. Song-ho's knuckles paled on the cane. That's the letters, Danielle said. Now the labs. She slid the guard's envelope onto the table beside the report. 4 years ago, your other son died, Tae-hyun. The name went through the room like a dropped glass. He left a widow and a boy. You had the boy tested. Quietly, a retention vial, your own lab, and the result came back wrong for the story you needed. Because Ji-ho isn't your son's son by the line you wanted to sell. He's Tae-hyun's, so you altered the first report. You had the lab change a date, swap a number, and you read the lie out loud to a grieving woman in your office, and locked the real page in a drawer because you told her a widow doesn't need paper to know her own child. Heir was in the doorway now. No one had seen her come in. She'd stepped off the service elevator in a coat the color of ash, and she stood there with her hands empty and her face, for the first time in 4 years, unlocked. I signed a power of attorney at my husband's funeral, she said into the room. You told me it was his trust. It was his son. You voted my child for 4 years with my name. Song-ho turned to her, and the thing that came out of him then was the closest he got to the truth all day. I raised that boy's house. I kept his name on a building. You'd have had nothing. I'd have had him, Hye-rin said. A board member, a woman near the end of the table, pearls, a folder of her own she'd stopped pretending to read, set her pen down. The trust documents, she said slowly, the ones we approved 4 years ago on the boy's behalf, those bear her signature under a grant of authority. Under a lie told at a funeral, Danielle said. That's for a court, the woman said, but she said it to Song-ho, not to Danielle, and her eyes did not go back to him after, and that was a vote leaving the room before anyone raised a hand. Song-ho felt it go. You've all sat at this table on money I made from decisions none of you had the stomach for, he said. You want to hand it to a laundress and a widow on the word of a lab tech and a runaway guard. You keep calling her a laundress, Min-jae said. She read your folder in a night. She read your relay in a night. She found the one witness you thought you'd erased. If she'd worked for you, you'd have called her the best hire you ever made. He looked down the table. She doesn't work for you. That's the only thing wrong with her. In this room, to you. Danielle laid the last page down. The witness's photograph. The emptied locker, the camera the man had known about, the timestamp, and clipped to it the courier log the guard had photographed before the box ever reached the 14th floor, the forged folder, printed and boxed and carried up on the morning of the day it claimed to prove a 4-year-old absence. You made a man disappear to bury this, she said. He has a daughter. He mailed it to himself before your car took him south. Your own lab's backups have the original dates under the ones you wrote over. A judge already told your lawyers she'd remember the folder in every decision she ever made about this family. She straightened. She's going to get the chance. For a long moment, the boardroom held nothing but the hum of the building. Then Min-jae picked up the report, and the exclusion result beside it, and he turned to the 11 faces at the table, and he did the thing Danielle had demanded of him in a borrowed room the night before, the thing she'd walked out on him for refusing. Yesterday I made a call, he said. I told a woman I'd name her son my heir today, in front of all of you, to win. His jaw worked. I did it without asking her. I looked at a 6-year-old and I saw a way to beat my father, And that is exactly what my father does. She walked out on me for it, and she was right to. He set both pages down, side by side. So I'm not naming an heir today, I'm withdrawing the name. My son is 6. He'll pick his own when he's not. A board member started to speak. Min-jae talked over him, which he'd never done, to anyone, in that room. Here's what I'm putting to a vote instead. The succession doesn't pass to a boy. It passes to a structure, a board seat held in trust for both children, Noah and Jiho, equal, neither able to be voted by a signature on a page, both released at majority to accept or refuse. He looked at Heir. The widow votes her own child. As of now, he looked at his father. And the man who forged a lab result, intercepted a dead woman's mail, and paid a witness to run, he holds nothing. No seat, no signature, no name on the door. Seong-ho's cane came up an inch off the floor, a reflex toward a gesture, toward the old motion of ending a discussion. Nobody watched it this time. That was how Danielle knew it was over. The room had stopped tracking the cane. The vote took 90 seconds, 9 hands, 2 abstentions that were really just men too afraid to be caught on the wrong side of a photograph. Seong-ho did not vote, because a man cannot vote himself out of the chair he is being lifted from, and 2 of his own security stepped to the head of the table, not to protect him, but to wait for him, and he understood the difference, and his face did the smallest thing Danielle had ever seen it do. It aged. "You think you've won a boy," he said to her, quiet, only for her, as they took his badge. "No," Danielle said. "I think you finally lost him. Both of them. You needed 2 boys to hold up one lie, and you never once thought the mothers would just add it up." He had no answer for arithmetic. He walked out between the 2 men who used to open doors for him, and the cane made no sound anyone chose to hear. At the glass wall he stopped once. He turned back, not to Danielle, not to his son, but to Heir. "Taehyun would have signed the same papers I did," he said, "to protect the boy. You know that." "My husband protected people by telling them the truth," Heir said. "You never once met him. You only ever met the shape of him you needed." The old man's mouth opened, and for the first time in the memory of anyone at that table, nothing came out of it. He left. Downstairs, a car he no longer owned waited for a man who no longer decided where it went. The legal part took months, the way the real world always makes you wait for the thing the story wants now. The forged folder went in front of Judge Okafor, and she remembered it exactly as she'd promised. The lab that changed a date lost its certification, and then its lease. The relay shell was unwound name by name until Seong-ho's fingerprints sat on every intercepted letter, and a woman's dying belief that she'd loved a monster was entered into a record as the crime it had always been. The theft of 7 gala dresses, tags cut, 6 in a stairwell bin, 1 behind a rack numbered 1412, turned out to be the smallest thread and the one that unraveled cleanest. A private security contractor on Seong-ho's payroll, room booked the same morning, sent to create a mess that would put a specific floor lead on a specific floor at a specific hour, so the old man could watch how she broke. She hadn't broken. The 7 dresses had been the leash he built to walk her into a trap, and she'd walked in carrying them in her own 2 hands and signed her own name to the delivery. And that signature was the first brick of the wall that buried him. Marcus Pell was gone by spring. He'd opened a file with Danielle's name on it once, promising to bury her in it. The file was subpoenaed, and the only thing it buried was the man who'd built it, because a paper trail cuts toward whoever held the pen last. The witness came home. His daughter started 3rd grade 4 blocks from where she'd started 2nd. Danielle met him once, in the bakery downstairs from an office that didn't exist yet, and paid for his coffee, and told him his kid would never know how close it came, and he cried into a napkin, and she let him, because some men have carried a thing alone so long that being seen carrying it is the whole gift. The sister's oath she finally understood all the way down. Her sister hadn't been a coward. She'd been a woman handed a lie by the one man positioned to make it true, and she'd chosen the only protection a lie like that leaves you. Distance, silence, a jar of savings, and a photograph with a father half turned out of the frame. She'd died guarding a door against the wrong man. Danielle stopped being angry at her the day she understood that guarding the wrong door is still, from the inside, an act of love. She put the photograph the sister had left on the shelf in the new office, next to the sign with the sister's name, where the morning light hid it. Jiho learned the truth in a room with two mothers in it, because Danielle would not let it be done any other way. Heir told him his father's name. Min-jae, who had loved the boy as a son for 4 years and would now love him as an uncle for the rest of his life, knelt to Jiho's height and told him that nothing about the love was changing, only the word for it, and that the word for it was going to be Taehyun's boy. Said with pride, out loud, forever. Jiho cried the way children cry when they're given something instead of losing it. Noah stood next to him and, not knowing what else to do, took the old photo out of his coat and held it up so Jiho could see the man half turned at the edge of the frame. "That's my dad," Noah said. "You can look at him too if you want. He's real." The two boys looked at the same photograph, one finding a father in it and one finding an uncle, and neither of them yet understanding that a woman in a walk-up and a widow in a tower had spent 4 days refusing to hate each other so that this exact minute could exist. Min-jae did not get Danielle back that spring. He got a phone number and a rule. No papers with his name on them for her to sign, ever, and every conversation in daylight with a door she controlled. He kept both for 7 months without once asking for more, and that was the thing she was watching for. Not the grand gesture, which men like him could buy, but the small, unbought patience of a man who has learned that a person is not a chair to be voted. He came to Noah's soccer games and stood at the far end of the field until Noah waved him closer. He learned that the boy's hair curled tighter when it rained, which he had once asked Danielle about across 4 feet of courthouse marble, and she had told him. "The tube will tell you when." And the tube had, and now he knew, and he never brought it up, because knowing was enough. Once, in the 4th month, he slid a paper across a diner table toward her, and her whole body went still, the old reflex about anything on Kang letterhead, and then she saw it was a drawing Noah had made, and Min-jae watched her understand and said, "I know the rule. Nothing you sign. This one you keep." He'd waited 4 months to make that small joke, and the waiting was the point, and she let herself laugh at it, and that was further than she'd let herself go with him in half a year. Heir and Danielle stayed the thing they'd become in a room off a hotel cafe, 2 women who'd refused to hate each other on schedule. Jiho and Noah traded the photograph back and forth like a library book. The 2 boys who were supposed to be a weapon between 2 families turned into cousins who argued about which of them the man in the picture would have liked more, and the answer, which neither of them would understand for years, was that Taehyun had died before he could love either of them, and Min-jae was determined to spend the rest of his life covering the debt for both. Danielle opened her own company that fall. Not laundry, logistics, chain of custody, evidence handling, the exact skill that had let her read a folder as an object and a lab result as a lie, sold to lawyers and hospitals and anyone who needed proof that a thing was what it claimed to be and hadn't been touched. She named it after her sister. She hired Rosa first. Kayla ran the night desk. The office was 3 rooms above a bakery, and on the door was her own name, and the lock was hers, and no one on earth held a signature over it. Min-jae came by on the day she hung the sign. He stood in the doorway the way he'd learned to stand, on the threshold, hands empty, waiting to be asked in. "You can come inside," Danielle said. "It's my floor. I decide who's on it." He crossed it slowly, the way the town car had once followed her down a street at her pace instead of its own, and she understood that he'd learned the same lesson the driver had that day. With this woman, you let her lead. Noah barreled past both of them with the photo already in his fist, holding it up beside Min-jae's face, the way he had in a courthouse hallway when a hand had risen halfway and stopped. This time the hand did not stop. Min-jae knelt and took the small old photo and looked at himself half-turned at the edge of 6 years he'd never get back, and then he looked at the boy who'd carried him in a coat pocket across a whole childhood, waiting. "I heard what you told the judge," Min-jae said, "that you came out good." Noah nodded, uncertain, the way he'd nodded once before. "You did," Min-jae said. "You came out good, and I'm going to be here for every day I still get." Danielle watched from behind her own desk, in a room with her sister's name on the door, and let the moment be what it was without narrating it to herself, because she'd spent 4 days learning that some truths you show and never explain. Then Noah took the photo back, folded it once, and slid it into his father's shirt pocket instead of his own. "You keep it now," the boy said. "I found you. I don't need it to know where you are." Nobody in the room reached for a word. Some doors you finally get to leave open. If this story moved you, stop for a moment and reflect. Have you ever poured your whole life into work that made you invisible, holding one truth no one would believe until the proof was in your hands? Have you ever loved a child so fiercely that you were willing to stand alone against a family with all the power just to give them the name they deserved? Tell us your experiences and feelings in the comments. We read them all. And if you believe in stories about truth, motherhood, and redemption, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a part of our community and help the channel.